guys.
Welcome, everyone. How are you doing? To tonight's Midnight Ranting.
They're amped up.
Book
They are
of Daniel, ready and
They are ready
rearing
to
to go. Book of Daniel, prophecy or forgery? On this episode, we throw Daniel back into the lion's den and ask the question if the Book of Daniel is prophecy or forgery. We're a skeptic channel, but after our opening statements, we'll be opening the floodgates early tonight, meaning anyone can come join us and say what's on their mind. We'll also give everyone the chance to have their own opening and closing statements, atheist or theist, liberal or conservative. Come as you are, just not on the sheets. And if you'd like to see your questions, comments or thoughts read on the screen, you can do so by tagging me at Amy Newman. We also have some Discord if you'd like some discussion, debates, or memeing action. Lastly, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that all button icon so you can get live reminders for our YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch streams. And if you'd like to support the show, we offer some unique perks with the aim of creating more content at patreon.com/Amy Newman.
Huge
perks. Including, and actually, this is... I'm gonna do jazz hands. Including awesome Patreons like K.O. Champ and Oz from the Atheist Roundtable, Ian Davenport, Diana Smith, woohoo! Welcome, Diana, and Grumpy Old Cuz, woohoo!
What a group of misfits that is right there.
I know. And with that being said, Book of Daniel, prophecy or forgery? Honestly, I'm new to this story. I was raised reading the Torah at the same time. I thought Transformers movies were awesome. And I've never had a chance to in-depth read what was going on. So, starting to peek my head into the Book of Daniel is fascinating, to say the least. Turns out, God has more tricks up his sleeve. He sends a bubble shield better than any priest that I've seen from an MMO. Saves his BFFs from lions and ensures every smart person in all of Babylon doesn't get their head chopped off by having a prophet number who knows what have the ability to read a king's dream and save the day. You know, this canon shtick is fun stuff. I love me some Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings. However, is there something biological going on here? What the hell happens when someone gets messages from a god? Does their brain go beep, boop, a whoop, and they have the info? Ooh. If we put their head under an MRI machine, would it explode with an awesome visual effect? I don't know, because all these prophets seem to be dead. And the people who claim this was written by the authors are the same people who think a 600-year-old man was world champion boat maker. So was the Book of Daniel prophecy or forgery? Well, instead of a literal interpretation of events, I think a committee has more to do with who got the final credit. Thank you. And okay, How are you, James? And are you ready to throw Daniel back into the lion's den?
As far as I'm concerned, he never left. He's always been there. But yeah, this was a good debate. I have to say, I got to watch a good chunk of it, so that's good. Um, they brought up a lot of good points, and it was clear that both sides really knew the topic very well. So I really want to get to hear what you guys have to say about it. But just a few points that stuck out to me from the debate was you reading these Bible verses, you kind of run into some trends. You kind of see the same things happening over and over again. You see the mistakes that were made as far as events that happened, like the names of rulers. He should have taken a page from Charlton Heston, who just decided that, you know what, I'm not going to even pretend that I know which pharaoh is in office right now. So I'm just going to call him Pharaoh no matter what. I'm not even going to try to name him because what are the odds you get it wrong? And then that would make it look like the text wasn't real. So yeah, he should have taken a page from that one, but he threw some names in there. And yeah, they weren't accurate. But later on, he seemed to learn from his mistake because he just went back to like, okay, well, we'll have the king of the north and then the king of the south. Very descriptive. That's pinpoint accuracy for Bible prophecy. Giving intense details like there will be earthquakes and other disasters in diverse places. There will be strife, there will be discord. Oh, okay, well, that makes sense, but you only really get that kind of pinpoint accuracy from the book like the Bible that's truly inspired by an all-knowing, loving, omnipotent God. And you better believe what it says, or you all know he'll kill you and he will enjoy doing mean things to you after you're dead. And it's very clear they did point out that the people on the Christian side, they begin with their conclusion. They assume that the text is valid and true and inerrant. So they start there, and then they work backwards to try to make sense of it. And it's very clear that they do that because they give the text every benefit of the doubt on any point, anything that comes up that could be a problem. They'll come up with something to explain it away or work around it. Or, I know it says that, but it really doesn't mean that. And you have to take it into context. And you might be able to do that with one or two things, as Jim pointed out. But when you're doing that over and over and over again through the whole book, I mean, come on. Let's see if any other notes I have. Yeah, and it seems pretty clear that these books, that these prophecies were made to uh, encourage a resurgence to Jewish fundamentalism during the Babylonian captivity. Like I said, they weren't mutilating their genitals. They weren't mutilating their kids' genitals. Maybe they were even doing crazy evil things like eating pork or not sacrificing to Yahweh. Because, hey, they've been in Babylon for a while and they haven't seen any evidence that Yahweh even exists. They weren't alive during the Exodus. They don't even know anybody who was. So Daniel or whoever took that pen name decides to write prophecies like, look, it's all coming to an end soon. And basically that's what the Christians have been telling themselves literally since the first century. Every generation has believed that the end days were coming up, that they were the last generation. And that continues even to today. So I'll save the rest of my points for later. I want to hear what everybody's got to say. Mute. You're on mute, Amy.
I double muted myself. It's like zombies. Sometimes I double tap. So I do have really just a few comments because I was listening to the back and forth, but not as much as I have on slavery, but enough to talk about. But we'll open it up for the floodgates of hell or heaven if you're a theist. We'll take it either way, baby. To say what's on their mind. Is your body ready, James?
Do it to me. Sell me a
Woohoo!
quality muffler at a reasonable
A
price.
quantity, exactly.
I mean, there was a lot of little nuggets.
Woohoo! And okay, I broke off your point, but that's okay. I'll
Yeah,
send the link into chat. And what were you about to
yeah,
say?
yeah. I was just so there were quite a few interesting nuggets that came up in this debate, and Jim and Dr. Josh were making lots of good points. The thing about asserting that a text is inerrant and infallible is all you have to do is find one thing that is not true in it. And it doesn't mean everything else is untrue, but it does mean it's not inerrant. It does mean it's not infallible. So if it's making bizarre claims that defy logic, reality, the laws of physics, and it also has known errors in it, it's probably not the word of God. Let's see.
And okay, so I have
Yeah.
sent the link into chat. And hello to everyone out there watching us in YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. Feel free to join us. And woohoo, we got people joining already. And okay, so before I even get into any of my notes, we might as well get some people in and having some fun. We're midnight
We got him in
ranting.
already. Woohoo!
I know, woohoo! And the Book of Daniel, prophecy or forgery, Crow debunk. How are you? And what are your thoughts about either the debate, the topic, optionably tacos, but generally speaking, one of those two topics?
So
Or the
first I
Miami
would
Dolphins
say-
prospects to win the Super Bowl. That too.
Okay, so
Go ahead.
the debate is great. So all of guys are very educated. Do you hear me? Okay.
We do hear
So,
you, yeah.
Yes, so you can really get a lot of stuff mentioned there. So I pretty actually investigating this stuff for pretty long time and have my own notice about book Daniels. For example, I know the Christian apologists, what is Roger Libby, who has very detailed presentation of the positions that Christ are true, and I actually investigate how it is the best to debunk it. So yes, and this debate has some great details about it. So we could now discuss this issue, or I don't know, we can also go through the Daniel texts and prophecies and check what really are there, because so there's actually a lot of information in this debate, but also a lot of information was not mentioned there. So it is actually a lot to discuss also. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Thank you so very much. And welcome to the stream. And okay, I would say I would go back into open conversation, but before that,
Wow.
we are midnight ranting on the book of prophecy, the book of Daniel, prophecy or forgery. Jim, welcome
Woo-hoo,
aboard.
Jim, welcome.
How are
Hi.
you?
Hey,
And what are your thoughts?
I'm oddly energized.
Good job on that debate, Jim.
Yes,
Hey, guys.
you did an awesome job. I
Yeah.
was very new to this topic. And yeah, I thought you and Dr. Josh did amazing. I
Thank
always
you so
say you
much.
and Ken Hovind at this point. I think Oz got me in on that. But yes.
Oh no! Last time Kent Hovind and I were together, he got really
Bomber
upset.
It was almost as bad as Mr. Batman when you guys debated.
Yeah.
And okay, so what are, I guess, your just thoughts overall? We're just speaking the book of Daniel, prophecy or forgery.
Are you talking about the debate or just the topic in general?
Either one actually.
Anything,
How
yeah.
you thought you did? Yeah, if you just think you've talked about enough about the topic, how do you think that the debate went? Either or tacos. I'll go back to that either.
Well, I think the debate went really well. Although I'll be honest, I was surprised because going into it, I really expected them to somehow try to tie Jesus in, because that's usually what's done, when we're talking about prophecy. But it seemed like the entire opening statements on both sides just completely avoided the topic of prophecy altogether. So I was a little thrown off. But I think once we got the train on the track, I think it went really well.
I agree. I think once you set the definitions,
For sure.
So yeah, I think it makes sense that what happened was it was probably around the 2nd century. They took some older texts that they had just laying around, and they just added to it and cobbled together and made a nice prophecy book.
Sure. If you can find texts that already apply to your current situation and that people were already familiar with, why wouldn't you use those?
So it is plausible that people just accepted the new text would come sort of.
Sorry, one more time.
So it is plausible that people have accepted the new appearing text as valid prophecy and valid book, actually.
Is it possible that they've accepted the text as a prophecy or not as a prophecy?
Yes. So they accepted a new book of Daniel. It was one of the points on the debate.
Well, I mean, the early audience, of course, believed it to be a complete document in and of itself. I mean, it purports to be written by the person who is alleged to have written the book. In the first 6 chapters, it's written, in the third person, but it's written in the first person in the second half, in chapters 7 through 12. So I mean, it's clearly posing itself as a document being written by this Daniel figure in the 6th century.
But there are some parallels between first 6 and late 6 chapters. There are I have heard some mirroring about the chapters, like the prophecy would come in the first part, mirroring in the second part in some way, like the prophecy of statue mirroring in the prophecies of beasts.
I'm sorry. I don't know if you're far away from your mic, but I'm having a hard time understanding.
Sorry. So, as I have heard, the apologists argue that the Daniel is consistent and is written as a whole, because for example, there is a mirroring of the content. For example, prophecies from the first half have a sort of reflection in the second part in such a way that, for example, the prophecies of a statue is sort of reflecting the prophecies in the later part and so on.
Yeah, exactly. And this 4 kingdom trope that you see isn't original to Daniel. It's used by earlier Greek authors, by Greek contemporaries like Herodotus, to symbolically represent a succession of either kings and or of rulers.
Okay, so can we go just so in the right order? So first was about the statue. So what is your opinion? What the parts of statue and the stone stands for? So the stone is probably the Jewish Messiah coming, not necessarily related to Christian Jesus.
We'll let Jim answer, and then
so
bring
we're gonna
the next guy in.
I'm gonna let Jim answer. I want to bring up a single point that I wrote down that he made during the debate, and then we're gonna bring in Bird. And so, Jim.
Okay, I'm not. I want to make sure that I answer your question directly. Are you referring to like Jewish messianism or like messianic expectations? Or?
Yes, of course. Because if we are viewing like consecutive writing, first it would be the book would suppose the Jewish messianism, and then Christ have adapted it to support Christ's messianism. For example, there is clear reflection from Daniel to Johannes' revelation with the same passages, and so yes.
Sure. Yeah. And if you look at Daniel 9, for example, it's not the prophecy in Daniel 9, 24 through 27 is not compatible with the Christian interpretation of it, the Christian application of it, rather. The way that it's presented, the prophecy in Daniel 9, is that there are not one the Messiah with a definite article, but rather there are two Messiahs with a little m. It's not a reference to the coming of a Messiah and then the cutting off of this Messiah. If it was, then the text would imply that the prophet had to have lived for over 483 years, as there's this 62 week gap in between. So no, I don't. I think that Jewish messianism and Jewish eschatology is incompatible, first of all, with second period Jewish eschatology, and secondly, and most certainly, with Christian expectation of the end of days and their eschatological views. Thanks for your questions.
Thanks. So can
And
we?
we'll come back to question time. I just wanted to ask Jim, because I thought you brought up a good point that, or at least I thought you were alluding to, is that it's not just in Daniel, but it's just as in like Moses, they really think that these literal characters are the one writing the story, or that the authors are the ones that they portray as they're portrayed. I thought that was a really good thing, because I think it's illustrated very well in the book of Daniel, but I think that's a common theme, is that we have to take almost a lot of these writers as if they are, who the authors say that they are as authors, if that makes sense. I thought it was a good point.
Yeah.
Yes,
As
of
opposed
course.
to the Torah, where Moses tells about his own death.
Right. Well, and the different divisions, you've got the Torah, and you've got the Nevi'im, and you've got the Ketuvim, and the Torah, of course, was the collection was finalized before the Tanakh as a whole, but the last two divisions, the Nevi'im and the Ketuvim, the prophets and the writings, were also completed at different times. And Daniel obviously didn't make the cut for what the Jews considered to be prophet material, because it's not until like rabbinic literature that we see Jews referring to Daniel as a prophet, unless you include like some of the or one of the rather Qumranic references, which isn't even in the book of Daniel. We don't know if he's talking about Daniel or if he's talking about the same Daniel that like Ezekiel is talking about. But yeah, I forgot where I was going with that. But
no, I just thought it was a good point, and I agree with you.
And
okay.
He's talking about our buddy Dan from Exodus. Maybe.
Honestly, I think that's one of my notes. Is I got so excited just because that's one of our inside jokes in our Bible study. Is it's like, and then there were the Nephilim, and it was filled his heart by Nazareth as he left the land of Babylon to find Dan. And you're like, oh,
all these crazy
Dan,
names.
okay,
Dan.
But okay, we'll go back into open conversation in a second. But Bird, we are midnight ranting on Book of Daniel prophecy.
Another interesting point to be made is that there's a lot of disagreement with the Book of Daniel's late dating, because the closing of the canon happened shortly after, just possibly even as early as 100 years after. And yet they have no problem accepting texts in the New Testament that even they believe were written in the late 2nd century, when the canon of the New Testament is closed at 120.
And I will say this, and I'll let Bird in. But one of my new pet peeves is just realizing how the transition from oral to written is so subtle. But that's how the fundies are born, in my opinion. Because it's changeable in oral tradition. It's like even the guy who wrote it's changeable, wrote it in oral tradition, changes it. But once it's written, everyone's like, look, it says it here. You want to argue with it saying it here? Yeah. And it's like, okay. And it's like, can we change it? Right. They're like, no, from the up there. Can't
Exactly.
And the
change
selection of the
year.
books is just arbitrary. Whatever fits the narrative, they accepted.
Mhm.
So may I ask
Exactly.
something?
And they don't even consider that most of these interpreters aren't reading the book in its original language, and in some cases not even reading it in the primary translation, but they're reading it from a secondary translation.
Translation. Yeah, it's like a VCR problem.
Right, a
And
copy of a
okay,
copy of a translation of a translation.
So
you
may I
just put
ask?
all static. And
It's like manuscript
actually,
section.
so Caro, you'll be the first question in the open conversation. Just let Bird in, and then we'll transition it back to you.
Well,
Always
I just want to say I'm not going to stay and bother you guys as long as I have to pop into the other one and make an appearance.
you and
We
Jim
are not a bother at
anytime.
all.
Oh yeah, and actually, anytime that you or anyone don't feel shy. Just feel when you're ready. Tell me, and I'll let you do an outro, and you're good to go. If you really have to jet, you can just leave. We heart you just for coming on. So
Yeah,
thank
we're
you so
happy to
very much,
come on.
and I think you did awesome.
Like give me like 10 or 15 minutes. I can answer whatever questions or whatever, so I can be of some use while I'm here.
Okay, thank you so very much.
Maybe
sure.
Bird has a question.
And we're biased here, but I think you and Dr. Josh.
We all are. It's just
A.
about what biases you can tolerate.
Yeah, exactly. And okay, speaking of someone not biased, Bird, we are midnight ranting on the book of Daniel, prophecy or forgery. How are you, and what did you think about either the debate or the topic?
I thought the debate was interesting. I caught a little bit of the debate. Sorry, I'm not sick, but just kind of clogged up a little bit. Yeah, it's all good. That's not a big deal. I don't know. I caught a little bit of the debate, not much. I really never tuned into the book of Daniel because I don't think it's like the word of God by any means, and I think the story's kind of silly, but that's just my thoughts on it.
Okay.
Any question
Thank
for
you so
Jim
very
or
much, Bird.
anything?
Yeah. Well,
Not right now. No.
Okay.
and okay, then
May I
we'll
ask
go
Bring the
back
next-
into open conversation.
We'll
It
bring the
sounds
next
like
one
Hero
in.
has a question for Jim.
Yes, so Jim, recently you mentioned the transition from oral tradition to the written, like in Septuaginta or in New Testament. Can you probably suggest some literature what you like historically accurate describes that, so you can actually know how it happens?
But regarding oral tradition.
Like building the Old Testament and New Testament canons. That canon.
Regarding canons.
Yes.
Well, regarding canon and like oral tradition. I mean, it doesn't really go like that. It doesn't go from oral tradition to canon. It has to first go to a written stage before it can first be considered canon.
But
If you're interested in like the I would say any annotated Bible would be good. For the Old Testament, really interesting one that I got recently is by Stephen Chapman. It's the Cambridge Companion to the Hebrew Bible. And as far as the canon of the New Testament, an oldie but a goodie would be Bruce Metzger's 89, the canon of the New Testament. He talks about the development of it, how it came about, and what it meant to the audience at that time. And for something like intermediary, like for authoritative text, like during the Second Temple period, Shay J.D. Cohen, 2006, has a book called From the Maccabees to the Mishnah. It's really, really good.
thanks.
And okay, I want to ask. I just want to do my one point, my last point, and then we'll bring in Oz. And okay, the other thing I wanted to ask you, woohoo!
For Oz.
Oz is like, my boys were up there. I know you guys did awesome tonight. Okay, so another thing I actually wanted to ask you on, because I am just reading it really for the first time, was you said he gets his own life wrong. that
Yeah.
there were numerous like things that didn't match up. I wonder if you could talk about that.
Sure. So in the book of Daniel, it opens up with the siege of Babylon, and Daniel is taken with three of his friends, and they're all members of the upper community of Jerusalem, and they are taken into captivity. They are exiled, so to speak, and they are under Neo-Babylonian rule. And Daniel lives the next, from what the text says, it adds up to be about until he's about 80 years old. So his entire life is spent under Neo-Babylonian rule, and he experiences the fall of the Neo-Babylonian Empire to Cyrus the Great, the Persian, and he experienced all these events, and yet he gets them all wrong. He doesn't know who the king is when he's taken from Jerusalem. Like that's something that you would know.
Yes. So
He doesn't
think of prophet.
Right, exactly. He doesn't know when Nebuchadnezzar came. We only have two documented accounts of Nebuchadnezzar sieging Jerusalem and taking people into exile, and it's not 605. You know, it's many years later. The reason 605 and 606 is posited is because that amount of time gives you close to 70 years. It gives you 68 years of exile, because the period of exile wasn't the fully predicted 70 years. But in the book of Daniel, there are three, exiles or times of exile, or sieges of Jerusalem, or taking of prisoners by the Babylonians. But everywhere else in the Babylonian text, the place where we would expect them to record a taking of prisoners, because that's something that they loved writing about, we would expect to see in any other text but the book of Daniel three sieges, or at least one in 606, 605, depending on how you what calendar you're using. But nowhere do we find a siege of 605 by Nebuchadnezzar of Jerusalem. In fact, Nebuchadnezzar wasn't even in the area. We have documentation showing that he had just completed the Battle of Carchemish against the Egyptians, and he wasn't even king yet at this point. In fact, it wasn't even until the following year that his father died, and he was forced to go back to Babylon before he became king. So he wouldn't have been able to even be back in the area of Jerusalem until after it says that he was attacking the Hatti land, or the Hatti land, which was not Judah, it wasn't Jerusalem, but the area north of there that was already under their control.
So if I could, so what you're saying is, if you were a police detector and you were listening to a witness, you'd be like, your timeline is not quite adding up here.
Right, like if I was a policeman and like they told me that they were from New York City, and like I mentioned the Statue of Liberty, and they said, "Huh?" You know, I'm like, you don't know the statue? Oh, who's the current mayor of New York City? And they said, Rudy Giuliani. It's like, we might want to question this guy's claim that he's from New York.
Yeah, might get a little sus, as the Gen Z says.
For sure.
I think there is some
when Nebuchadnezzar came.
And
597 and 586.
I think there is some explanation. For example, he does not need to be a king in order to see Jerusalem, and he became later, and other stuff what apologists say. But I wanted to say, how are we sure that historical data what we have are accurate, and what info can you suggest to read about it?
And Jim's going to answer that question, and then when he's done, we're going to let Oz in.
We have great records for this period on the Babylonian side, on the Persian side. In fact, like for the exile of Jehoiakim, I was talking about it during the debate. we have nearly 200 cuneiform tablets, and that's just the ones that have been cataloged and translated. There are many thousands more that have been cataloged or translated that mention who the king was of Jerusalem. We have biblical texts such as Jeremiah and Ezekiel that mention who was king of Jerusalem, but Daniel gets it wrong, and so we're expected to say that the people who did the invading are wrong. The people who were invaded alongside of Daniel were wrong. The people who were writing at the same time that all this was going on and not after, as Daniel is, Ezekiel and Jeremiah purport to be writing much closer, if not during the time of exile. So I mean, you would think that these events were a lot fresher in their mind. So I mean, while we would expect Daniel to be right about it, we wouldn't expect Daniel to be right. And every Babylonian text that we know that mentions who the king was, and all the other biblical cross references that mention who the king was during the siege of Jerusalem, were wrong.
So also,
Makes sense.
the-
Let's bring Oz in.
Yeah, well, before, and thank you so very much for that answer. In fact, we're going to bring in Oz, and then I know Jim has to go soon, but you could probably ask another question, Kiro, in just a second. But Oz, we are midnight ranting on Book of Daniel, Prophecy, or Forgery. How are
Womp,
you?
womp, womp.
Womp, womp. And what are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, what's up, everybody? How you feeling?
Hey, Oz.
Hey,
Doing pretty good.
And Jim, great to digitally meet you for the first time. Dr. Josh and I talk quite a bit, and he's my teacher. But
right on.
With the Book of Daniel, for me, because I'm more of just a simple, common sense kind of guy, and the fiery furnace, the whole lion's den thing, like just those things before we even dig into the dates and the prophecies and all that, like that those stories just in and of themselves are so outlandish to me, that my brain does not compute that. We had 3 guys go into a fiery furnace and walk out, and nobody had a singe, not a hair.
And then there's a 4th guy that they can't even find.
Yeah. And then you're telling me, and we can all go and on the YouTubes or the Googles or whatever right now, and put in searches for what happens if you get caught in the wild with hungry lions. It doesn't end well. It's not gonna.
Right.
You're not at the top of the food chain anymore.
it was
Especially since these lions were fed a meal, a diet that was exclusively human, and they were starved for several days, I believe it says, and they still didn't eat them. Like that just even adds to the incredulity.
They became vegetarian really quickly.
And then they got sick of that shit.
Like they were before the flood.
That doesn't last long.
Yeah, so that's when it comes to the Book of Daniel, and I remember that, because I was a Christian for 30 plus years, and I look back at stories like that in Daniel. And I just talked about this the other day with somebody, the furnace and the lion's den. It's like it is preposterous. That is preposterous. And to ask me now, and this is no offense to anybody that still believes that the Word of God or the Bible is the Word of God, it's inherent, and it's flawless. It just, for me personally, it's outlandish and ridiculous to ask me to believe that level of apparent nonsense.
Right. But what's important though is that to the audience that it was addressed to is that it didn't matter if it was nonsense, because they're seeing these stories of these Jews who are being forced or being pressured to compromise their religion and assimilate with a foreign religion, something that is heterodoxical, if you will, to their very being. And they resist to it even under the threat of death and of something so painful. And it's something that's was very useful, this kind of literature, because the Jews just went from being under the rule of one person from another. Even when they got back to Jerusalem, they were still under foreign rule.
It's like how the Christians use the threat of hell to keep people in the faith.
Yeah, I mean, somewhat. It was to well, in the case of the Antiochian persecution, there were already Jews, and there had been generations of Jews who were assimilating. They were going to the gymnasium and competing in Greek events like the Greeks. In the nude, they were giving libations to city gods. Then you have the Maccabean revolt and the which once the Seleucids were defeated, then becomes the Hasmonean dynasty. And if you look at the Hasmonean dynasty, what are they all about? What is their foundation? Their foundation is maintaining their traditional practices and exercises of the Jewish faith.
Right, and Jim, I do appreciate everything you just outlined there. In that time, it was what it was, right? They didn't
exactly. We should not look at it that way now. It doesn't apply to us. It's not for us.
Right, exactly. And that's I love that you just said that. You took the words out of my mouth, because unfortunately, there are still not every, and I'm not going to generalize, not every Christian, but there's still a lot of Christians that they still buy into the fact that these were literal things that happened.
They either have to,
yes, a true Christian
say
must
that Jesus was wrong.
believe that.
Yeah, we don't have anything. We don't have anything that we can test or demonstrate or make it falsifiable to say, oh yes, if you throw living human flesh into a den of lions, it will live. Or if you throw 3 human beings that are living into a fiery furnace, they're going to walk out with no scars, no burns, not even a singe. And what's scary is we do have people currently on this globe that take that literal.
Exactly.
Earth is flat.
I quoted an early 20th century Protestant Bible scholar who comments on the Book of Daniel, and he wrote the one of the first concise introductions to the Old Testament commentaries. And he writes, he says, historical research can deal only with authenticated facts which are within the sphere of natural possibilities, and must refrain from vouching for the truth of supernatural events.
That was one of the points I marked down for one of them, is that I noticed that they always love to narrow the scope and then say, why do you guys narrow the scope? That may be my interpretation of it, but it's we're not saying.
Well, it seems so hypocritical that so often is the accusation that we critical scholars operate under the presumption that prophecy isn't real, when they are operating under the presumption that prophecy is real, with only their text, not any others, but just theirs.
Exactly.
And the ones that get it wrong, they just ignore.
Right.
Well, exactly.
And only
just
the
change
ones
the billboard
that they can somehow manipulate or that directly reflect their current beliefs. But anything that is contrary will get either manipulated, or if it can't be manipulated, is rejected. And you see that happening over and over again throughout the course of Christianity and Judaism and just the development of Abrahamic religions in general.
And I noticed
part of the canon.
If I may ask one more question to Jim, because Dr. Josh and I were just talking about this. It was either this week or last week, and I can't remember if it's in Daniel or what book in the Old Testament it's in. But there was a prophecy given about a city that had the name of the city was 2 letters. It was like I can't remember right now. But literally the meaning of the name of the city was ruins.
Right.
Was that in Daniel?
I think the one that is it the city of I?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, why is that freaking hang on. I honestly can't bring it to the front of my head. So I had my first vaccine shot yesterday, and all day today I've not been able to look at a screen or anything. With just I had a huge migraine, and like the debate took everything out of me. Like right now, that's why I have my camera off, because I have my screens covered up, and
Oh,
like the
no.
lights
Relax.
off. It's
Yeah. Oh,
but I'm having trouble recalling right now. I know what you're talking about. But
Yeah,
what about the prophecy specifically?
well, I was going to, and I'm sorry I put you on the spot. Obviously, I didn't
No, you're
know any of
good.
that. So, but even to that, because I feel like it was either Daniel or possibly Hosea. I don't remember, but even that where the Bible lays out this prophecy of this is what's going to happen. But then once we get to current day where we can actually excavate and we can pull out, go to archaeology and do all
Wanna
that,
make a joke?
we find out that in the city that was supposed to still remain,
Mhm.
it's called, the name of the city is Ai, which is just
Yeah. It's a Canaanite city. I know exactly what city you're talking about, and the archaeological findings that you're referencing, and the argument. Yeah, it's a great argument. I just can't think of the biblical reference right now. But another similar argument is the city of Jericho, and the archaeological findings really provide two things uh, that even just on the surface completely prove that the biblical account of the Battle of Jericho, the Wall of Jericho, and the marching around and the blowing of the horns and the walls falling down is completely unhistorical, because the period that the Bible purports it to have been invaded, the archaeological findings don't reflect any presence in that region at that time, that it was uninhabited, and there are still portions of the wall of Jericho that are still standing. The walls didn't all the walls didn't fall down.
You mean the wall that's not there? It's still there.
Right, yeah. It's the city that you're referring to, the AI, the I, it's means like a pile of rubble, which it's not
It's
a
in the
pile of
book of
rubble.
Joshua. It's in the book of Joshua, by the way, Oz.
Joshua, yes,
Yeah.
right, yeah. Well, it's about Joshua's conquest. I couldn't
Yeah.
remember if it was in Genesis or if it was in Joshua.
It was Joshua 7 and 8.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to bring up one more point that they said, and then I want to bring in Jason. A red flag went up for me during the debate was they kind of took a pot shot at the Enlightenment era, like they very specifically those words. And that's just like a little red flag to me when they're trying to be like, listen, all you sciencey people with your Enlightenment era ideals and philosophy, and it's like,
if you want to bitch about the Enlightenment period, then first log off of your internet before you do it.
Yeah, exactly.
To me, they seem to imply that it was like singling out the Jewish history, like it's anti-Semitic because you're only questioning the Jewish historians and you accept everything else. But that's not at all how it really works.
It's like send me a pigeon bitching about the Enlightenment period.
We'll get that to you as soon as we get the guy to build the 600-year-old guy to build the boat.
I know.
Woohoo!
Gathering those animals at such an old age. I'm glad he didn't have arthritis. And okay, we'll go back into open conversation in a second. But we are I'm
gonna head out, guys.
Then Jim.
It
was nice having you on.
Questions, I can give you like a 10-second, 20-second answer.
I would just say, well, anyone can ask questions, but my big thing is where could people find any final thoughts, and where can people find you?
Well, just thank you for having me. I enjoyed this. I really enjoyed the debate. It's probably my favorite debate I've done to date, even with my pounding headache. But thank you all. And
No, thank you.
you can
Yes,
find
thank
me
you.
on
Yeah.
YouTube at youtube.com/Jim Majors, on Twitter at the Jim Majors, or you can find me on my farm if you can find it.
Woohoo! Well,
He's in
thank you so very
Kansas
much,
City,
Jim.
folks. Kansas City.
Cold.
Thanks for coming by, Jim.
I'm
Great
just
job on
kidding.
the debate.
Total
Yes,
guess.
thanks.
Hey, thanks so much, guys. Y'all have a great night.
And I feel
Now, I
bad.
know more people
know,
had questions to ask
I know.
him.
Yeah, I
but-
was gonna say. I think Pat had a question.
Yeah.
It's
Yes,
hard,
I had many questions. Oh.
but if he's still in chat, or we'll get. But
Or
Jim,
go to his
thank you so
channel,
very
you
much. Or go
know.
to his channel. Yeah.
Go to
or
his channel or
we'll
tweet
get-
him.
Or
He's
we'll
got his
get
Twitter.
in. We'll get Pat in soon. We'll talk about it anyway.
Okay.
But we are midnight ranting on the book of Daniel, prophecy or forgery. If you liked what Jim was hearing and saying, you could go check more content out at his debate at Modern Day Debate.
Can,
There you go.
Can
They
you
tell me the
smell-
sex sells, people.
can you smell what the sodomite is cooking?
Yeah,
Oh,
it
baby.
smells pretty awesome.
Woohoo!
Oh, I hope Yahweh. I feel like Yahweh only like burns the cool people.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, we're moving along. Jason, we are midnight ranting on Book of Daniel, prophecy or forgery. How are you, and what are your thoughts about the debate or the topic?
Hey, what's up, guys? I thought that it was a pretty good debate. I thought Jim did a great job. I thought Dr. Josh did a good job. I thought it was kind of down in the weeds a bit for me. These guys obviously are very knowledgeable in these topics, so that's great. But I guess the broad perspective I would say is that my interest is more in just prophecy in general, like the concepts of biblical prophecy and why there's a lot of flaws in that approach or that thought of biblical prophecy, mainly because the Bible is written. There are many books. It's very complicated in terms of all the differing descriptions and stories. And that, somebody can, at a point in time, could make a prophecy based off of the plethora of information they have read in the past, associated with their religion. And then people in the future can then take that and then regurgitate it in all different kinds of ways to get what they're seeing currently to fit with what somebody else has written. And so just in general, we know that happens all the time, where there's passages, something has happened in the New Testament and somebody's like, aha, Jesus is that's prophetic, because look at what's happened. Look at what they said in the Old Testament. I'm like, Jesus had access to the Old Testament. The Old Testament has all different kinds of components to it. So it's not that difficult to be able to formulate or connect something and say that's prophetic. And so that's that I think that I was going to ask Jim that particular question, but I think it's a very broad question that he's very down into the specifics of how that is associated with the book of Daniel, which I think is great. And I was very impressed by Jim, but in general, that's my position. And I think that this issue of prophecy and why it's flawed in the Bible can be applied in a bunch of different areas. So that's just my take on it.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much, Jason. And yeah,
It's like, how
I don't
many
know what's
places
the
was Jesus
prophecy.
from? Jesus from like 3 or 4 different places, we're told. Galilee, Bethlehem.
Hi,
Yeah, Lord.
Jason.
Hey, what's up, guys? Look at the the Immaculate Conception, or I don't know if it's prophesized that the Messiah will come and that he will be born of a virgin birth. I'm not sure if that's something written, but I'll bet if you went back into the Bible, you could find a passage somewhere that implies that in some way. And then somebody's like, look at that. Jesus, it's written that Jesus was born of a virgin and it was prophesied he's therefore the Messiah. I mean, like the people that wrote that knew that that was in the Bible, that
Well-
was the case. They're like, aha, let's write this in such a way that implies that
Yeah.
Jesus is
Well,
the
even
Messiah.
even with that, whether it's prophesied or not, the text within the book is highly skeptical, because even when you start to drill down on the original definition of where how we got to virgin, which is the word alma in the original text, doesn't even have anything to do with virginity. It just has the meaning is or it implies the stage of life that the young lady was in. Had nothing to do with whether she had sex or not. So even that in and of itself, we're already left with like, okay, we're being a little dishonest here.
That's good. Yeah, I didn't know that.
Because if your conception is immaculate, you were doing something wrong.
And I want to, I forgot now that I wanted to bring up one last subject to Jim, but that's okay. This was, as I was saying at the beginning of the panel, it's worth bringing up again. I ask very specific questions, and because I like to see what pops out sometimes, and something fantastic popped out
never
this
know what'll
time.
pop
I don't
out.
know if anyone was watching the debate, but I very much asked them. You know, the claims are one thing, and they like to bring historical evidence. I always just like to know what the hell would actually be going on like a biological level. And I just asked, you know, do you think that something was going on that would have been empirically detectable while prophets are receiving prophecy? And he gave me a single sentence, or was basically a question, and then went off topic and talked about something else. But that single sentence was basically looking at Jim and went, I don't know what your guys' feelings are on ESP. And I was like, all right, so that question was worth it. Thank you. Ooh, as I hit the microphone. But I was like, are we okay?
ESPN.
Yes, exactly.
But can I? And I want to make this statement because I think this applies when we're talking about, especially when it comes to Old Testament claims, and Christians are take the stance of, well, you don't understand the original definition. Well, first of all, you probably don't either. So let's not dig into that, but let's just take it at face value, for what it is. There's not very many times that you're going to be able to take a book that's been around for 2,000 something years and be able to tell me that you understand the accuracy of the text within that book. So as translations come and go, where are we left? Like, where are we left? Like, is it just based on your interpretation? Is it based on your pastor's interpretation? Because now we can literally create anything we want to create out of this book.
Exactly. And if the religious folks were to say, we do not see this as literal, these are stories that have been told, that, like Jim was even implying, like that there's a context to like what was going on with the Jews at the time, and these stories in some way provided them a perspective, an outlet to what was actually going on. And if Christians phrased it that way and said, we don't think that the earth was created in 7 days, we don't think that these things are actual literally, but the core conceptual aspects are valid in terms of our religiosity, I could accept that more from their in their position.
That's liberal Christianity.
Yeah, I mean, not that I would believe it, but I mean, I can.
It's more defensible.
It is. Yeah. Agreed.
Well, and to put the pin on that point is, if you're just going to take the most current translation, or the translation that best fits your model and your lifestyle, and all that, and then not compare it to the actual original, then what are you really doing? Like, what do you really believe in? Because if you're not following the true and exact original God breathed, inspired, infallible word of God, then you're just following a lie anyway. So if you're not doing that, if you're not following it to its original T, and you're not doing your due diligence as somebody that says that you believe in this God and you have faith in this God, but you're not going to do the homework and you're not going to do the hard work to get into what the original Aramaic or Hebrew or Greek, like, you're not getting into that, then as far as I'm concerned, you have no idea what the fuck you're talking about, and you're just believing whatever somebody spoon fed you.
Hey, not my adage, but a sheep herder needs sheep.
Amen.
Woohoo! Ramen, baby. And okay, we are midnight ranting on a book of Daniel, prophecy or forgery, as I make random sound effects on the table. Atheist Junior, I hope you're having a good night. What are your thoughts on the debate? The topic, I know. I could tell that Jim was having a lot of fun back and forth. It's like a boxing match, and after he's like, "All right, I think I need my Wendy's 4 for 4 now. Got to relax, throw the socks up." And okay, Atheist Junior, but he did an awesome job. I think him and Dr. Josh both complemented well. They both covered different territory. And okay, Atheist Junior, we are midnight ranting on Book of Daniel, prophecy or forgery. What are your thoughts on the debate, the topic, or as always, tacos?
Well, I didn't actually see this debate. I've been too busy preparing for my own to keep track of.
Oh, that's right, Ken Hovind.
Yes, I'm like Rocky in the training montage. But
I'm hopeful that'll happen.
Oh, it's already
You never
scheduled.
know with Ken.
Yeah, he might back out, but I don't think that he will. But
you should wear a full SpongeBob's uniform. I'm sorry. No. Okay.
No. The Book of Daniel, I would say any book in the Bible that is supposed to be prophecy, I don't take that seriously, because if you have multiple authors and one person writes the beginning of a prophecy, well, I can just come in and complete it and say, like, look, it's fulfilled, as, writing the next book or the next testament. And somebody who does think that the prophecy is true is Ken Hovind, because he's based his whole end times prophecy on the Book of Daniel, saying that, like, the tribulation starts this year in September and goes for like 7 or 8 years. But in the Book of Daniel, there's like this metaphor for a statue where it's like got different metals for the head, chest, feet, and then the toes are like iron and clay mixed together. And he says this theory about like that the different parts of the statue represent different countries that will be powers at the end times. So I was wondering if anybody else had heard of this like interpretation, but yeah, that's all for me.
That's
Yes,
a pretty common end times Christian interpretation. Yeah.
And okay, we'll go back into the open conversation. We'll get Pat in here. Pat, we are midnight ranting, looking at that beautiful moon. We're asking ourselves, is the Book of Daniel prophecy or forgery? How are you, and what are your thoughts on the debate or the topic?
I'm actually really happy. I'm a graduate student also. My own area of research is religious synchronism in the Western Black Sea. So I occasionally have to deal with Christians as Christianity first, second, third century. So some of my questions were, seeing Jim, who's pre-dissertation, because I'm not even close to that yet. He's going to be defending his field of research, and they did a really good job. And my criticism and my thoughts on the debate were, I actually thought even the Christian side, or what I call the theologian side, they did a fairly good job defending, from apologetic position. I just think that we as a historian and an archaeologist, that's the two master's degrees I hold. I think it's important to realize that the sources do not really support any of their positions. And what I wanted to talk to Jim about, but I'll bring up here, is that in my own research, I looked at First Maccabees, and there's claims within First Maccabees where, Onias, the high priest at the time in Jerusalem, is attempting to make a military alliance in order to resist Greek rule. And he reaches out to another Greek group, in this case, the Spartans, who had, although they were once a great military power, they had been in decline. But even at this time, he reaches out and says, hey, you're our friends. And in this fake letter that we find within Maccabees, it's actually in First Maccabees 12, he reports, hey, by the way, that Spartans are really secret Jews, right? And trying to get the Spartans to come over as allies. And there's often a political component to religious syncretism, which is the blending of religions. And in this case, Josephus later goes on to recount in Antiquities of the Jews, oh yeah, the Spartans are really secret Jews. He actually relays how Abraham had a daughter and had sons, and they had daughters, and all of a sudden Hercules showed up in Africa and grabbed one of Abraham's daughters. And that's, in Greeks claimed Hercules often as their founding mythical founders of their cities, Sparta being one of these cities. And so, hey, by the way, since we're distantly related cousins, you should come help us fight off the Seleucids and others. And it's just kind of, you start reading these histories, and Maccabees being, a pseudo-historical. It's not a truly historical text. It has some historical truths in it, and it has a lot of mythical affirmations in it as well. And Josephus bought into it. So the criticisms of Josephus as a source are pretty valid, because he tends to project a lot of pro-Jewish mythic propaganda, if that's how you want to approach it. And that's really what I want to talk to Jim about. I just appreciate the chat. And Amy, this is awesome. You host something like this, but I now teach at a small college, so I often get religious students. Yeah,
Amy's the best.
Oh, thank you. I heard
Good to have you on, Pat.
And Pat, I'll take us back to open discussion. But what subject specifically do you teach?
So I teach ancient history of the Mediterranean, and so I have a master's in ancient classical history, and then I also have a master's degree in Mediterranean archaeology. So I'm currently working on my PhD. So
I wish you said high school biology for 15 years.
There we go.
No, but I actually, before I went back to grad school, I got a bachelor's in microbiology, so I got a little.
Oh, nice! Oh, so the theists, the Christians must love you.
Oh, they hate me.
And
Patriot University.
I could say.
So
Liberty.
My current research is at the University of Leicester in the UK. I do my research in Romania each summer. So,
well, if I could say, Pat, it was great to see it when I was talking about Alma and the translations. There are so many Christians that fight me on that, and I'm like, no, you don't understand. There is a huge discrepancy from the original to the Hebrew to the Greek, where it's just like their misuse of the word faith, if we're using a simplistic form.
And I think the best debate you can make is that, you can look at a Greek copy of the Septuagint and then place it next to a Jewish version from Hebrew, and you see where the Septuagint is wrong. Now you got to remember that it was falsely claimed, by the way, that these Jews in Alexandria just wanted to translate into Greek and were Hellenized. Well, remember Ptolemy Soter the first, he's actually saying, hey, I want these sacred writings. And Jews in Alexandria weren't really part of Greek culture, but they were Greek adjacent. So he ordered this translation of Greek works, these scholars, and there's a lot of mythology surrounding how they did it and how quickly it was done. But these scholars got together, these rabbinical scholars, and they translated into Greek. But there were words that just didn't translate. Greeks were obsessed with virginity of women. If you study Greek culture, which is my area of focus, you realize that like women and propriety and basically being able to ensure your wife was a virgin when you married her was really important. So these Greek influenced rabbis said, well, they must mean virgin, that's going to be the best word to translate. But in the Hebrew, all it talked about was a young woman.
Yes.
It literally like just post-adolescent female. She's old enough to have babies, but she's not married. And they translated, well, not married girl means obviously she's a virgin, because a woman in Greek society that wasn't a virgin had a much less net worth, so to speak, as far as in a male-dominated patriarchal culture. So,
and not to get too off topic, but that's my whole thing with the whole Joseph and Mary story. It's like we have to go that far. We have to go to like
exactly
God gave you the baby.
Exactly.
Well, even before that, they had to create the Immaculate Conception. Not to correct anybody, the Immaculate Conception doesn't have anything to do with Jesus. The Immaculate Conception has to do with Mary's birth. That Mary herself was a divine being and a vessel for the Lord and Savior, because Jesus could not be born into a woman that had sin. Mary was considered sinless in Christian tradition.
She didn't have the original sin by
Correct.
Catholic doctrine. She had to be
Yes.
specifically
Well, at least
created
that's what she was
without
telling
that.
everyone.
Yeah.
No.
And Pat, I already like you, man. I'm glad we're on the same page. But because there's not a lot of people that do the homework behind that. Because what that does, if you can rip away the virgin birth and the resurrection, you have taken the two things away from Christianity that makes it. Those are the pillars, right? Those are the pillars.
I would say sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're good.
I would say those are only the modern. Those are only the pillars, what we'd call Orthodox Christianity, because we had Christian sects in the first, second, third century that were, later declared heretical, and they were heterodox. But we had, they weren't really Gnostics. They were like the Arians, for example, weren't really Trinitarians. And we say Arians with an I, not a Y, because we know what the people are talking about, early Christian father. But, when you have subordinationism, it implies a begetting, that God created Jesus. That was, that's not, you can't say that in a modern debate now with Christians because they lose their mind. But for the first 3-4 centuries, that was not decided.
Everybody loses their mind.
They lose their mind. And,
they did. They didn't declare that Jesus pre-existed.
Right.
And that's what I meant was more so the modern day Christian when
right.
if you can demonstrate to them and strip away the virgin birth and the resurrection, you've taken the two pillars of the faith. And even Paul said it in the New Testament, that it's all in vain. And you can do whatever you want to do with definitions. And that's what apologists do now in modern day, is they want to redefine words. It's like, well, no, that's not what that meant. Well, no, actually, we can go back and we can show you that this is exactly what the fuck it meant. And then if you want to try to manipulate or move move positions or whatever, that's up to you. But I'm going to go on what history tells us, and that sucks. That sucks for the apologist.
And Oz, to piggyback off what you just said, and then they lecture us or sometimes spend entire debates trying to say that we don't understand what atheism means, and going into basically a straw man of basically the hardest strong atheist possible, when it's like, no, it's a skepticism.
Right.
We're Steve McRae when we need him.
Christian, man, I love Steve.
Any of the Christians listening, the original word is Alma. It's Alma. And I went back in my notes and looked, and Pat, you correct me if I'm wrong, because you have way more credentials than I do. But just on my reading and studying, and I've put a good amount of time in, but you've put way more hours into it. It is simply a young woman at the age to bear.
Right.
Okay, so this is really interesting because you guys obviously, more about this than I do. This is not my area. And
I'm new to it.
Yeah, but this concept of a virgin birth, I've heard lots of people say, look, many differing religions have a kind of a virgin birth concept with their savior Messiah. I don't know. I know that there's several religions that has been the case. So if what we're saying is that the original translation did not really imply that concept of a virgin birth, but does that mean that over time that these writings have been mytholo. I don't know what the word
Yes.
would be. Like
Yes.
the mythos has been built and built and built.
Yes.
And okay. So that's the case. Yeah.
Probably one
Sorry.
of the best examples of what do you consider virgin birth in the ancient world? For example, Romans, Romulus and Remus are born of a Vestal virgin, which by the status of her position, she would be a virgin, because to do so would be profane act. Now, other Roman historians go, well, just because she said she was a virgin doesn't mean she was a virgin, right?
Of course.
She has sex with a god, and this, depending on whether you want to be Mars or other traditions of how they get there.
First of all, hot. Second
Right. So these are the kind of things that are very common and ubiquitous in mythologies of the ancient Mediterranean, that's actually the area I focus my research on.
Yeah.
So,
and Jason, and I'm speaking for myself and nobody else here, but this argument alone, just based on that word, Alma, and what we know that to mean, is why I have, as a former believer, like I said, for 30 plus years, I want to make sure people know that I just didn't stumble upon this position, is why I find myself to essentially be a mythicist. I can't believe that there was a guy that just was popped out of a virgin with no sexual interaction, no anything, and then we won't even get into the divinity, but just the fact that does happen.
Well, we have seen it happen in the animal kingdom. Like there are salamanders that are female, and they'll do a mock courtship ritual where they get impregnated without a male, and they produce an exact clone of themselves. So we have seen that happen with animals. I don't know. I don't think it happened with Jesus, but
Parthenogenesis.
Have we seen it? Do we have any record of that happening with a human being?
No.
And I wanted to say off of Oz's point, because this is, I guess apparently I have a few new shticks now, but I really do not understand this one-on-one special. Like, I know he wants a personal relationship with all of us, apparently in number 2, but he seems to have like really super special 1v1 relationships with people where he can just transmit prophecy. And I don't understand that concept at all. Like,
only people
just
who
like I
lived
don't
thousands of
understand the
years ago.
resurrection. And I get a recent apologetic is that these are wise men that are chosen by God, but it just, and some of them, let me tell you, aren't very wise going into their stories. Some of them even explained as drunkards and stuff like that.
They'll say like, God doesn't tell me. God doesn't just tell me things in prophecy. He puts it on my heart to do things.
Yeah,
say stuff
whatever
like
that means.
I don't know. It's just very weird, this notion. And he doesn't
God
do it
came
anymore.
onto your heart.
And if he does, all of the other religions call that a cult. If any new prophets come along, they're quick to point it out. But
let Jesus come inside you and put his yoke on you and just grow inside of you. Let Jesus in.
And okay, I'm going to say one last irreverent thing, and then we're going to bring Amaretto in. But Pat, when you
Karen's getting ready to head out.
When you were doing your opening, you said Hercules, and I just have to go, Hercules, Hercules, Hercules. All right. Now that I got that out of the way, Amaretto, we are midnight ranting on a book of Daniel, prophecy or forgery. How are you, and what are your thoughts about anything, the topic or anything we've been talking about tonight?
Hey, so y'all are gonna have to forgive me. I just got my second COVID shot today, and it's kicking my arse. I am in my left arm is in so much pain.
Can I interrupt you for 1 second? Because now you just made me, just like the Hercules, you just said you got a shot, and so now I have to, contractually obligated to go, shot.
You're not the only person who did that. Shauron did that to me earlier. Shauron sent me gifts of that earlier. I can't even. I'm like, I wish it was that kind of shot. Yeah, so I'm kind of coming in late because, but knowing what I know the book of Daniel. Kind of ties in, like we were talking about stuff the other night about prophecies, and this is the thing, you know, what is it, law of numbers or something? After a certain amount of time, yes, something is going to happen. You know, or people are going to, you know, interpret things a certain way. You know, I think symbolic interactionism really comes into play across history with a lot of things that we see in the Bible. You know, people interpret things and they persuade others that their interpretation is correct. People see, you know, and find meaning in things. And, you know, eventually sometimes those things can take over a culture and society. And while I'm not an atheist, you
Not
know, probably never, but it's okay.
We still
Um,
heard
but
and always will.
oh my gosh, you better.
Woo! It's okay. Theist
But
brothers and sisters, we're hearts and hugs.
well, listen, like this is the thing. I've treated the Bible kind of like Aesop's fables, you know, in a sense, just to truncate it. I mean, it's not, you know, as clear and defined as that, obviously. And to be honest, the Bible is really hard for me to read because of my ADHD. But
Understandable.
listen, like I wish I had an annotated version as a kid. Um, but that being said, like knowing what I know and everything else, I definitely feel like, you know, yeah, maybe there's like lessons about morality, maybe certain things, but you know, that you can pick up on it, and if it, you know, has a positive influence on somebody's life, yay. On the flip side, though, if people are using it to oppress other people, you know, being part of the LGBTQIA population, being assigned female at birth, you know, anybody that was black, brown, POC, yeah, it's a travesty that, you know, something that is basically, you know, so trivial as myth, because we don't have the document, we don't have a way to prove it. It's so far back. Technology was not to the same extent. And I just think it's, you know, you can look at it a certain way, sure, but I think to like treat it as your modus operandi or whatever that term is, I guess, like, you know, this is like, you know, how everything should be because it's in this book, when this was a book compiled by men. And there were also, if I remember correctly, books that were rejected from the Bible. You know, it's a mess. I think it's just nuts. And then, you know, there is a lot of stuff that overlaps too, through different cultures, you know, as far as a virgin birth. That is kind of something that is commonly seen. Rape is also very common in a lot of mythos as well. So yeah, that's
And
kind
the
of just
Bible.
like, yeah, I mean, I mean, slavery, rape. Yeah, I actually have to do a post on that for psychology tonight about the rape crisis in India.
How to rape your slave.
Oh no, the rape crisis in India. And basically, Modi's my gosh, Hindu Tuva, I think it's called, like this mindset, this ultra nationalistic militant mindset that Modi is a part of. They place a huge importance on their mythos in the culture, and rape is super common. And that, I think, is contributing to part of why women in India aren't seen as you know, on equal footing, and there's a huge propensity towards violence and rape. That even China, which has a problem with female feticide, you know, on a huge widespread level, doesn't have. So I think, you know, in when you're looking at these religious texts. Like my big thing is as a Unitarian Universalist, like, or somebody who, that's what I would call myself. I think it's, you can take inspiration and find good things in different in different faiths and religions and paths. But I think to say that, I don't think anybody has it completely correct. And this is part of why. I don't think if there's any higher being that this BS, you know, rape, slavery, what? You know, it's just, it's very counterintuitive, or not counterintuitive, counteractive, I guess.
I'll take both.
Sorry, I've been up since like 7:30, Amy. I'm like out of it today between this and the shot too. But
listen, God had to make rules for how to sell your kids into slavery. It's just
see, this is why I like to tell like all the people who are like the theists who are like, or rather the crazy conservative Christians who are like, I don't need a COVID shot. I have the power of God on my side. And I'm like, yo, so like what happens if God like told the scientists how to make this vaccine and you're just basically turning your back on God and they break? It's they can't even compute. But yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, I think you can appreciate this. It's almost off topic, but well, it's on topic of God. But my favorite question is always to ask them what gender their God is. I generally kind of tee them up beforehand and try and make them make statements and clarify. And I'm like, oh, okay. So,
Amy, have you seen the meme that's been going around from it's not safe for work. It's I think it's La Blue Girl or something like that. This Japanese anime, and there's this redheaded figure that's basically saying like, you know, I may look this way, but I am neither man or woman. And it's like the concept of gender is not equal or something across the universe or whatever. And I just look at that and I'm just like, oh man, I should just show this to like all the crazy conservatives on Facebook and just watch them lose their minds. Cause yeah, I think that it's very haughty and, you know, like we don't know everything about the universe. We don't. That's the whole point. That's the whole point of these. Is these were also, you know, spreading culture as ways to explain, you know, why things are the way they are.
God of the gaps.
So, you know, I can't say. I guess I can't say 100%. You know, obviously that these didn't happen. However, you know. Virgins don't typically give birth. There are ways you can get pregnant without having penetration. I've read about these, but
I've tried. It's still not working.
No fun.
Not 2,000 years ago.
No, yeah, no. But that, yeah, it's like what I was gonna say. Like we don't have, you know, there's not a ton of strong concrete evidence towards virgins giving birth being a common thing. You know, and sorry, something had popped up. I was like reading it for a second.
Don't mind me. I really shouldn't. It's
okay. You're fine. I'm like, it's my ADHD. I'm like, oh, thing. But yeah, I just think it's really sad. And I think I've said this before, and I'm sorry if I'm sounding like a broken record, but, you know, I just think it's really sad that, you know, people can read too much into things like that, into these prophecies. And, you know, there are people who are even saying like Princess Diana, 9/11, you know, God, freaking feel like PAX TV back. I'm outing myself as someone who grew up with no cable or satellite in the 90s and 2000s, but you know, I feel like this is the kind of stuff I would see on PAX TV, like conspiracy theories for the family kind of shit.
Or on the History Channel now. Tip your waitress.
TBN.
Yeah, wait a minute. No, the History Channel now, it's all crappy reality TV shows. And I'm sorry, Big Brother. If maybe the one thing I would go back in time, regardless of the butterfly effect, and do would be to make sure Big Brother never goes on the air. Between Big Brother and Survivor isn't too bad, but that is completely decimated the television industry in the sense that there's no good stories anymore. It's all shitty manufactured reality, and look what we have for it: Kim Kardashian on a pedestal.
Started with The Real World on MTV. That's how it all went downhill after that.
Actually all started with the Bible.
And thank you. And I will say, I think we're actually going to do a 1984 episode coming up because it's been on my mind lately. Especially since I think, I don't want to give too many spoilers, I think so many people miss the point of 1984. Because most people, I think, when they start the book, they're like, the moral of the story is it's about authoritative, blah, 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 blah. I feel like that is not the message of the story after going through, after reading the book. Let's just say the book didn't make me feel like a freedom fighter towards the end of the story. Won't give too many spoilers, but okay. Actually, Mubarak, we are midnight ranting on, is the book of Daniel prophecy or forgery? How are you? And what are your thoughts about the debate, the topic, anything we've been talking about tonight? Tacos.
Hey, Mubarak.
Hello. Okay. Do you know that? I don't know if anyone knows that, but in the Islamic tradition, the body of Daniel had been found when.
Prove it.
Yeah. When the Muslims, it's in the traditions, when the Muslims conquered Persia, they
Did
went
Muhammad
to this.
find it on the moon?
No. It fell between the two cracks.
Kinky.
Kinda. But they found a body in a castle or a palace on a bed. The body have not been ruined.
Oh, I did that once.
It's perfectly laying on bed, and they found a book on top of his face. And they took the book, and they took the body from the palace, and they got someone, I don't know who, they got it to translate it to Arabic.
Jesus.
And it's probably full of prophecies, and they decided what to do with that body is to bury it with the actual copy of, if it's a true story. The actual body of Daniel have been not ruined for decades, and actually more than decades, more like centuries, closer to millennium, and it's with the actual book that he wrote, his own prophecies, and have been buried in a city in Iran right now. The city is called Susa in Iran. But as a lot of people know, or maybe don't know, that Islam started as a sect of Christianity, as an Aryan sect, and you talked about the virgin birth and all that stuff. When the Quran says that that God created Jesus the same way He created Adam, with no father. So you could use it whatever way you want, and the thought that there were Aryan Christian and Nestorians at the time of Muhammad. So that's basically what I have.
Woohoo! Okay, thank you so very much, Mubarak. And I find I'm just starting to really get into. I kind of view the Book of Mormon and Islam as kind of like on same grounds, and I'm just starting to get into them. I view them as like the trilogies, because they both view themselves of kind of like there was the second prophet, Jesus, and then they're like, now we just have one more on top of that, each respective.
Is it like the Lord of the Rings? It's like the Bible, the Quran, and then the Book of Mormon. The Book of Mormon is the what is it? The
Silmarillion.
You
Oh,
have
no,
book
that's
one. You have the original, and then you have a remake, and then like they bring James Gunn in to do another remake because the first remake didn't do so well.
But they add a the onto the beginning, so it's fine. Kosher.
You have the Lord of the Rings, and then you have the Silmarillion, and then you have the Hobbit book.
Yeah, but the Silmarillion is like supposedly pre-Hobbit, so it's like the Silmarillion, then the Hobbit, then the other one. So you've got to be like some ancient texts, some other books, then the Bible, then. Now, just trying to think like the book. The Book of Mormon is like
the Jewish Bible is the original one, the Torah, the first 5 books, and then
is that the
the
Kabbalah?
Old Testament. No, the Torah.
The Torah. Okay, yeah.
That's like the first OG Bible.
The OG Bible.
And then people said these rules too strict. We need to like loosen this shit up. That's how we have the New Testament.
Man.
I was looking for my whip. Okay, exactly. And, all right, we are gonna we are going to let Oz have his outro for the night, and then we're going to let Nick in, and then we're probably going to go for another good 30 minutes, and then we're going to wrap out our outros because it's been a fun night. So, all right, Oz, we have been midnight ranting on Book of Daniel, Prophecy or Forgery. I hope you had a good time tonight. Your boy was up there. I say the same joke now every time, and only half people get it. The other half are like, "What the hell are you talking about?" But I enter a modern day debate. I'm like, they got the Kent Hovind to defend that the Book of Daniel is a forgery. Oh my god. But yes, I hope you had a good time tonight. And what are your final thoughts? Where can people find you? What are your final thoughts?
Yeah, you don't have to single me out. I am not that important. But I'll just say, thank you as always for having me on. You and James is James still here? Yeah. So thank you for having me on. And I feel like I've gained a couple of friendships and future relationships here tonight that we can chop it up and talk about some good shit. And as far as the prophecies, the one that I want to talk about before I show real quick is Christians remember when we have the Old Testament and there's quote unquote prophecies that are then carried over into the New Testament. The New Testament writers had access to the writings of the supposed authors of the Old Testament. So like with Abraham and Isaac, that is complete child abuse and emotional abuse and psychological abuse. And then we want to then say, well, no, it's a great thing because that was an example and a prophecy of what would happen to the Jesus Christ, which is still a really fucked up thing for a dad to do to a son, right? So no matter how you try to twist and manipulate those two stories, that either they were singular or one was a prophecy for the other, it's still traumatic and it's still bullshit as we see it today. So I want to make sure we highlight that.
Amen.
Good point, Oz. Amen.
Oz, just funny. You're reminding me of something I heard one time. It's almost as if you have the answers to a test and the book that you're being tested on, and then you write the questions. Right? Yeah. That's like prophecy, right? You know what you have to get to. Yeah. You have a book that you can look through, and then you write the test questions in order to test yourself.
That's a really good analogy. I like that.
Yeah.
So, I stole it from a professor of mine, so I'm not going to say that.
but
academic plagiarism.
No. He just said that close to citing. It wasn't APA, but he cited a source. That works.
Yeah. but that's what. And there's many examples that we can go through with the Old Testament. Go to the New Testament. We won't do that right now. But as far as for plugging and shilling, I am Oz from the Atheist Round Table. and we have a jam-packed weekend. Tomorrow night we have myself, Derek Lambert from Myth Vision, Shannon Q, Jenna Belk, and Dave Warnock coming on talking about exiting religion and the trauma, and how it affects your mental health when walking away from religion, and what you need to do, what are best practices, things like that. And then on Sunday, I will be with Derek on Myth Vision at 1 o'clock, talking about my deconversion story and what that looked like. Then at 7 o'clock on the Atheist Roundtable, we'll have Jaytheist, and he's usually on here, but he's on vacation. But he's a regular now here on this channel, and he's a former minister and now atheist. And we're going to talk about control, legalism, manipulation, and when do you know and how do you know that you're not just involved in an organization, but you're involved in a cult. We're going to dig into that. Then at 9 o'clock, which is going to be party time, we're going to have our turn-up show, which the first one we did, Amy was a part of for that, and is putting all the focus on new atheist content creators in our community here on YouTube, and making sure that they get a voice and that the volume is turned up on their message, their channel, their content, and doing all that. And anything else, tart.live is the website, TART.live, and you can find everything else there. I love you guys. I appreciate you guys.
Hopefully, atheist.
Oz, you're spoiling us. That's a lot of content there, buddy. That's impressive.
They do awesome things at Tart and now Tang.
Who won the debate tonight, Oz? T-Jump or?
I was hoping nobody would ask me. So we had T-Jump and we had Shane the Skeptic. If you're not familiar with Shane Isrig, he used to be a normal co-host on the Atheist Experience with Matt Delhunty and the others. And T-Jump lost tonight.
Oh, snap. What was the debate topic?
Morality, and is it objective or subjective?
Oh,
what was T-Jump's position?
Is he objective?
Objective, yep.
Okay.
Well,
T-Jump's got some odd morality perspectives.
It's the one thing that I wouldn't want to debate T-Jump on, because I don't even know if I disagree, if that even makes sense. I don't know if I agree or disagree. It's the one thing, because I agree with 90% of what T-Jump says.
Well, and I would say, and both Tom and Shane can obviously see this or hear this at any time. I've been testing some things because in June we have our next Ultimate Debate Championship tournament, and I'm experimenting with some things like having a viewer poll or a viewer count on who they thought would win. So tonight I based everything on the viewers. Like they had a link they could go to and vote on who they thought would win. And the thing is, like, it's awesome as far as interaction, but the thought in the back of my head is how many of the folks have done their homework and actually know these arguments, and that's because if you go back and watch the debate, I'll be honest, and Shane, I love you. Technically speaking, from just argument, from having the best argument and best presentation, T-Jump won, in my opinion. But based on the viewers, Shane won. So it's tough.
There you go. No, it's hard. I think modding was pretty decent. Judging was one of the hardest things I've done in a while.
Yeah, I'm trying to find a balance, and I do have a not to take a bunch of time here, but in our next tournament, I have a gal that I met years ago that she was in debate and then coach debate both in high school and at the college level, and she's going to be helping as far as putting together like the score sheets and coaching for the judges and the mods and all that going to the next tournament. That way it's even more professional this time around, but we are experimenting with things to try to make it more interactive for the viewer.
It's a lot to juggle, but you're doing a good job.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so very much, Oz. And go check out Tart, because like Amaretto's saying, they making a lot of awesome content.
They are awesome.
I'm gonna check it out.
And okay, so we're moving right along. We are midnight ranting on the book of Daniel, prophecy or forgery. Nick, I hope you're doing well. And what are your thoughts on the debate or the topic?
I am doing very well. Thank you very much for having me. I got to tell you, those really do sound like good shows. And I was like, for me, like the process of deconversion, I think atheism. Oh my God, what is up with that's what? Dear Lord, oh my God.
Hello there, fellow kids.
So
That just scream love. Praise Jesus.
the process of deconversion, I think, for a lot of theists is really painful. I think a lot of atheists and anti-theists really underestimate that and even mock it. And I don't think they do anybody any service when they do that. And so it's just to have that discussion, honestly, I think is great. And that sounds like a great panel too. So I look forward to seeing that one. But I show up and Jim vanishes. I haven't heard from Jim in like forever. God, he just, oh God, every time I show up on a stream, he just, I'm gonna start taking it personally. But Jim, Daniel, I was doing some research for a debate I was going to do on Daniel. Jim and I were both working on, we were each going to have a debate with S.J. Thomason. And he was going to do one. I think it was going to be on Daniel. I was going to go first. I kind of broke SJ. She stopped doing debates for a year after that one. She just canceled all her debates. And
Poor SJ.
Yeah, well, he called me up afterwards. He goes, "You broke SJ." I was like, "Sorry," but and then one day he said, "Nick," he calls me up. He says, "Nick, I got to talk to you guys on the show. We had the show back then, and can I talk to you guys?" I was, sure. So my co-host and I, we get into a room. He pops in. He goes, "I've discovered something." Just like, "Okay, what is it?" He goes, "Now you're not going to believe this. I've been going into the Bible. You know, I'm doing I'm doing prophecy. I've been doing Daniel, all this other stuff." I said, "Yeah, okay. Well, what is it?" He goes, "You know about Donald Trump and the Madison Avenue." And I was just like, yeah, his son owns 666 Madison Avenue. He goes, "Yeah, that's not the only thing. You know that he's the son of a judge, right?" I was just like, "Was he?" He goes, "Yes, he is." Like, "Oh, okay." And then he goes, "He's the son of a judge." And he starts going through all these things. And he's like, "This is in the Bible, Nick." And my co-host and I are looking, this is all off screen. We ended up recreating this on screen. But we're all, and he and I are both starting to get uncomfortable as Jim is just hitting this after thing after thing after thing. It was just like he's nailing all of these things. And we're both atheists. And we're just like, what? And he's just like, yeah. He goes, "Nick, I'm kind of scared." We're like, "No, okay, everybody take a step back." And we just start asking him, and he's got all these, "No, this is what's in the Bible, this is what's in the Bible." Then he bursts out laughing and said, "I made half that shit up." And I was like, can you strangle somebody through the screen? I don't know, but we ended up having him on because one of the things he said is, "I want to talk about how easy it is to fake prophecy and how easy it is to make it sound good. You just need enough that's credible." And so we ended up having him on to do that show. He did the whole. It was a great thing, but he was one of him and oh my God, I can't believe I forgot his name. He does a philosophy thing on YouTube, and he did a whole a very nice video on Daniel. And since then, Daniel has been one of my favorite books. It is irrefutably a defeater. There's all sorts of other problems with the Bible. We all know this, but if you just want to say what's the biggest defeater to the Bible in terms of this being the Word of God, it's Daniel. You're done. It's Daniel. There's no, the fact that Daniel is in the Bible, we're done. There's no discussion going forward as to whether or not the Bible is the divine word of God. It's over. You can sit there and have arguments over whether it's metaphor, whether but Daniel's it.
It's
so
just bullshit.
Yeah, on so many levels, just demonstrably so. So that's it. I wanted to come in here sooner, and I wanted to, but it's been one heck of a day. But I was just like, okay, I was going to come in, and so I'm here. I'm here to chat. But I love that topic anyway, and I think probably so much has been covered already. And I was listening in intermittently, and I was learning new shit. So I was just like, oh, this is fun. So that's it. I'm here.
This was an informative debate.
You're here. I'm mostly queer. We got this.
Mostly. Okay.
I'm only 50%.
But we don't
Only.
have the beer. So you can't be queer without the beer in the hand.
And my joke is normally I'm 50% straight, but I'm not sure which way. So
Nice.
Tip your waitress, folks. I got
Don't
a
limit
lot of
yourself,
dad
right?
jokes ahead. Okay. And we're
More
moving
to
along. Thank you
come.
so very much to Oz. And check out the Atheist Round Table. And okay, Eddie, we are midnight ranting on the book of Daniel, prophecy or forgery. How are you? And what are your thoughts about the topic or anything we've been talking about tonight?
Well, I've only caught part of it. Sounds pretty intriguing so far. I would ask, because I didn't catch the early part of the show, what exactly about the prophecy of Daniel is everyone talking about?
Well, it's more about are the authors the actual ones who wrote it? I think that's part of it,
Is it
or was it
valid story or is it fraudulent?
Well, I mean, it depends if you're talking about, as dispensationalists do, like future prophecy. No, I think that's just a terrible hermeneutic. I think there is what appears to be maybe some possibility that Daniel had, prophesied the coming kingdoms. But given the nature of generalized prophecy, I think it's kind of hard to say whether, it was really prophetic and enough or specific enough to say, yeah, Daniel, prophesied all these kingdoms that were coming. It's been a while since I read about it, but I think some of them were stunningly accurate to an extent, but the way that a lot of evangelical Christians and especially dispensationalists, I think it's just, it's fantasy, the way a lot of Christians hold to it as, prophesying all these crazy things later in the future.
Yeah. Throw it up against the wall and see what sticks. And if none sticks, it's not canon.
Right. Yeah, and just for a little bit of clarity and background, I'm a Christian, but I'm a mere Christianity kind of guy. My epistemology is I'm an evidentialist, more specifically Bayesian epistemology. So I think that given the explanatory scope of the resurrection hypothesis, it seems more plausible to me that the resurrection's what happened. But I don't claim certainty to really much of anything. So,
Hey, Eddie, this is Pat.
Thank you
Would
so
you
very
consider
much,
yourself
Eddie.
like so you consider yourself a philosophical Christian rather than a traditional Christian, more Gnostic in your beliefs, would you say?
And before you answer that, I just want to say, Sunflower, if you're out there, come on board. If you want to do even just an
Is he in
intro or
chat?
outro or join the discussion. I switch. James and I were the first off the Titanic, and we love it. So come on board. You can say,
yeah, you can move me out if he wants to come in.
and we'll just hang out in the back. So, but you were about to answer, Eddie.
yeah, was it Pat? Is that who asked me that?
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, I am definitely a philosophy first kind of person. I'm very analytic in my thinking, and I need things to make sense and paint a plausible picture for me to, believe that that's what's more plausible than what isn't. So I think that would be a fair statement.
Good. Well, I'm just so as you're an empiricist, right? At least you approach things from an empirical worldview. I'm kind of curious how you, as I'm an historian, so I'm wondering how you arrive at the at least historical validity of the resurrection account and attribution.
Yeah, I wouldn't say an empiricist. I would say I try to balance rationalism versus empiricism. I think we have a priori knowledge, and I think that some things we can conclude without necessarily empirical things, such as I exist in this world, and things of that nature. I do prefer things from maybe the scientific method. I think it's a very valid way of learning things, at least about the physical world. Given I would say, like with Gary Habermas's minimal facts, which I think he's down to like 5 now. I think it was 6 or 7 at one time. Things that are pretty much accepted historically. To me, when we look at the background of it, if we approach the evidence, objectively, in a sense that if there is a God and a God exists, would these things happen, or could these things happen? Because I'm also convinced by the arguments for the existence of a God. So even if I wasn't a Christian, I'd probably still at least be a deist or a pantheist or something like that, because I think the cosmological arguments are extremely powerful. So given the possibility that God exists, and looking at the facts that we have for the resurrection historically, the explanatory scope of the resurrection hypothesis covers, all the facts that we do have about history. And I think it makes the most sense.
Yeah. Sounds like you've been listening to Darth Dawkins a lot. No, I'm just.
Oh my God, no.
I think Eddie's the
Sounds
anti.
like the exact opposite. Yeah, from a Christian.
So, Darth, if you're watching, you can always come on.
I have no desire to talk to any kind of presuppositional apology. I'm not an apologist. I'm in philosophy of religion. I consider myself a philosopher. I don't go around defending my faith. When somebody asks me what I believe and why, then I will defend that. But I don't. I'm not an apologist. I loathe apologetics.
But you mentioned you're a Bayesian, like you use a probabilistic approach in evaluating your, like I think you mentioned something about you would use a Bayesian or probabilistic approach to whether like the plausibility of the resurrection being something that occurred.
Yeah.
Would that be correct? Okay. And then, I mean, just so I'm not really that super, like, I don't know if I understand the Bayesian application in philosophical terms. I mean, I use Bayes' law for other types of stuff, but in this instance, is it appropriate to say that you have some prior that relates to what? The possibility of somebody being resurrected from the dead? Would that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And of course, if you're familiar with Bayes, you know that the background knowledge is the most important part of coming to a probability. So giving the background knowledge that the possibility of a God existing, would he raise Jesus from the dead? I think Swinburne has calculated it to be like 97%, but I don't think most philosophy of religion people wouldn't hold that high of a confidence. But if we put in the background knowledge, that Jesus, whether Jesus was a madman or he was a son of God, versus if God exists, would he raise him from the dead? And the impact that he had on the world at that time, when we put all these things together, I think we get a better than 50, maybe closer to 60%. And I'm the kind of person, I think that even if it's 51-49, the more plausible position is the one that seems to be more probable. So
yeah, I totally agree.
Let someone speak. I just want to say, Amaretto, send in hearts. Thank you so much for being on. And I'm sorry, Jason, right back to you.
Oh no, that's cool. I mean, now I find this fascinating. I find it fascinating, this application of probability to this, because from my perspective, and I'm just my own personal view, is that from a probabilistic, like naive Bayes perspective, the prior is, what is the likelihood, when you say like historical knowledge, you're saying like, what's our prior knowledge that that the likelihood of God could have resurrected Jesus. So in that premise, you're assuming that if God did exist, then the probability of Jesus being resurrected is high, given the fact that God is an all-knowing, all-powerful being. But it seems like that probabilistic technique in this particular situation should exclude this issue of like God's existence or not. It should just be, what's the probability of somebody being raised from the dead? Because the issue is Jesus was resurrected from the dead. So can we probabilistically assess that? And if my perspective would be, the prior would be, what's our historical knowledge of people actually being resurrected from the dead? If there was historical evidence that would suggest that's the case, then that increases your prior. But it seems like the prior is like literally zero, because there are no evidence of that. But
yeah, so and that is usually, the critique. Like I was talking about, arguing over the background knowledge. That's why I prefaced it with, I'm thoroughly convinced, given the cosmological arguments, that God exists. So with that as a prior knowledge, background knowledge, then it significantly increases the probability. Somebody who doesn't accept that, I wouldn't expect them to, use that as background knowledge for them. And also the second caveat to that is, we don't hold that Jesus rose naturally. So I would agree 100% if we're talking about natural resurrections or a natural cell for cell kind of resurrection, then I don't know how you would come up with any kind of, prior probability for that, because we don't have any records for that. So I think if you're not convinced that at least, there's some type of intellectual, something behind the cosmos, I wouldn't expect somebody to come to, the probability that those who are convinced by, arguments for God in general would.
Yeah.
Well, but I think there are two faults, because first of all, there's also no priors, to the best of my knowledge, even for a supernatural raising. So you still have the issue, just because you're saying, well, okay, but the complaint on priors is for natural. Well, the complaint also applies to supernatural. And Dr. Richard Carrier estimated, using Bayesian analytics, that there is only a 70% chance that Jesus was real. Now that's still, pretty good. Real as in he existed, that there was a person walking around with the name Jesus Christ at about that time. So if there's a 70% chance that that's real, now you may not accept that number, but unless you've actually looked at how he did his analytics, there's only a 70% chance that Jesus was actually real. Then any calculation as to whether or not he was risen would have to start with that baseline and could not be higher than that analysis, assuming you don't find fault with it.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with Richard Carrier's work. In fact, he's going to be on my show. Nice. But Carrier is also fringe on that position. He is literally one of the handful of people in the entire world with the credentials to even really write on the subject. So, and my question would be, what would you consider? And this is what I would ask. Now, when Carrier comes on, it's just going to be interview style. It's not going to be, grilling him this, that, and the other. Because I'm just, honored that he's even going to come on. But what I would ask him, if it was that kind of environment, is what would qualify to you as something supernatural that you could possibly use as background knowledge?
But I mean, like, supernatural implies external to the natural world, correct? I mean, so, and I wanted to it seems like what you were saying before is that you have a perspective on the cosmological argument that you feel that argument in and of itself provides justification for God's existence. And then from that point, then you're like, okay, if that's the case, now I can use a probabilistic assessment based on that knowledge for the resurrection position. Is that right? Yeah.
Pretty much, but I would say it's the set of cosmological arguments, not just a cosmological argument, like the modal argument for contingency.
Yeah.
You know,
Mubarak's about
fine-tuning.
to head out. Say, have a good night, Mubarak.
Oh,
Good night,
Mubarak,
Cool.
would you like to have a final thought?
Well, quick thing, just good night, everyone. It's been fun.
Good to have you on.
Yeah, I inquired a job that kind of messed up my schedule. Now I cannot stay up all night. But I hope to see you all Sunday at 11 Central at Aaron Ross Quran show or Infidel reading the Quran. So it's gonna be fun. Last time we had it was fun. I don't know if it's gonna be as much fun.
I'm
But
sure we'll be with Aaron.
it's gonna be fun. So
Woo-hoo. Yeah, with Aaron and Mubarak, it's always fun.
Yep.
Sweet.
Well, thank you so very much, Mubarak. And go check out that Quran study. It goes perfectly with our Skeptic Bible study. So there you go.
Yeah.
I just had a thought. You know, I've read Dr. Carrier's work, and I mean, I find some of his arguments compelling. And as a, you know, again, my own background, I would say to, I don't want to straw man him here, but you know, Carrier's own admission is mythicism is not a binary decision in history. There's historians that say more likely than not Jesus existed as a historical personage. There's some that say high likelihood that they existed, but I find very few historians. Now I find a lot of theologians, but I find very few historians will say with absolute certitude that Jesus existed. So the you know, to give Dr. Carrier his due credit, you know, his own position is he's a soft mythicist by any extent. And he usually gets put in a camp of, well, he's a hard mythicist. No, there's other people like you know, I would call Dr. Price, but to call him a fringe element, you know, his scholarship outside of the mythicist category is considered fairly solid in historical circles. So he's just the first person to do an analysis on a topic that's very touchy.
I'm going to agree with Eddie,
I'm
though,
a
on that.
70% myth.
No, 70% real was his. So he was actually in the camp of real.
Right, more
but
likely
that's
than
still
not.
much lower than most people. So
Yeah, also understand, I'm not denigrating.
Oh, I know you're
Richard Carrier's credentials. They are impressive. However, he's the first historian that I know of, at least, to use Bayesian probability for the existence of God. Because I'm sure, as Pat knows, I mean, usually it's some. Of course, there's the philosophy of how to, you know, get the best accuracy for history. So it's not a settled case.
No.
But a lot of historians use, you know, like explanation.
Declarative.
Yeah,
I think based on the
explanation
evidence, I come up with this probability, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, my thing was that he's when I'm talking about the fringe position, it's even though he comes out to 60-70% or something like that, he thoroughly advocates for, you know, alternate explanations of Jesus. And I think that's where he gets a lot of flack in academia, is because we can question where the facts lead us. But, you know, in my opinion, and I'm not an expert, but in my opinion, and quite a few that I've read, he just adds too much ad hoc rationalization to a lot of the things that we can question. But when we start adding all these things we don't have evidence for, then you're raising, if you take it and put it back through Bayesian probability, then you're raising the probability of all of these in succession as being accurate, actually lowers the probability of all of the hypotheses together. So it's, I mean, I like Carrier. I like to be challenged on my beliefs, you know, and I don't want to Yeah, Pasta Mike's talking trash in the
shit.
in the chat, talking about me being a presup, and he knows I loathe presuppositionalism. So
No, I just
Precepts come off on ungenuine. In fact, they're almost in my view, the politically correct version of the Christian, because they're like, we're not here to talk about God. Jesus, did I say Jesus? Who said God? We're talking about the all things seeing
Like the
thing
flat
in the
earthers.
sky.
How can you know what you know? You know,
well, presups are literally dishonest.
Yeah,
because their whole purpose is to undercut any
exactly.
attempt to even argue.
Of
If you
course.
can't ground it, you can't talk about it. And that's BS, because we all start with the axiom of logic. We all have logic. We use logic. Let's start there and see where our conclusions go, but they won't even move that far. So that's why I just
because if you go into a conversation, I hate to say it's edgy, but if your whole shtick is like, how do we know we're even here? How do we even know how to think? It's like, oh, maybe we're all just brains in vats. It's like, okay, we get it. We just saw the Matrix. Please calm down and let's talk about something else.
I did get a chance to debate Batman for the first time.
Oh,
I get it. They don't have any evidence. We get it.
On Discord, and I made him. He ended up calling me a fake ass Christian and left the server. I was like, "Is that a win? I mean, did I win?"
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
See, I would like to gloat. I think I broke him in an equally similar manner as I came onto his onto his server, and it was very specifically theology. I don't even think it was presup, but he was just like, "Hey, sir, are you one of the trans?" And I'm like, "Yes, I am. Just get out of your system now." So
Yes.
go back
Now,
to
can we talk
theology.
about the
It's
evidence
like,
for your
no,
God?
no, sir, and I'm like, cool. And I said, I think I said, madam, you could call me whatever you want. Just let's go back to blah, 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 blah. And he muted me, and he's like, I am a sir, and you don't ever call me, so I have earned the right to be a sir. And it's like,
okay, evidence for God? Evidence for God? Any evidence?
Wait. How does one earn the right to be a serf? He was born ostensibly born male. I want to go back and figure out if he was born male. Where is his? I'm missing something.
Yeah, exactly. And the funny thing is why got us to have such a big sword and brittle skin. I mean, he came out. All I had to do was say "madam" once, and that's all it takes. Holy shit, guy!
Batman.
I would like to ask Jason a question.
Yeah, sure.
You were talking about Bayes' theorem. Are you in like statistics or?
Yeah.
So, if you were going to, how would you calculate something like the resurrection given Bayes' theorem? What would be the background knowledge that you use?
So, whenever I'm using, and like, I typically use Bayesian probability for much harder. And when I say hard, not difficult, but like more explicit data sets. So when we talk about a prior probability, then I would expect that the calculation of that is based off of like absolutely certain knowledge of an outcome to be able, and because certainly the prior is essential for going in, because if I change my prior, it's going to completely change my overall conditional probabilities. So the prior is essential, and as you mentioned, you yourself were saying that historical knowledge is critical for evaluating and coming up with those conditional probabilities. The problem that I have is that in more philosophical approaches, the assessment of that prior probability is extremely vague. So like to be able to say, this is my historical knowledge that would give me a prior probability on some topic, like whatever, like, I don't know, God's existence or the resurrection, etc., that knowledge in and of itself is extremely suspect. It's not absolute, and so that immediately creates a problem in that conditional probability calculation, because now you've got a prior which you're not really sure that prior is accurate. So it really skews everything. So that's my only concern with that, is like that it makes using the Bayesian applications somewhat difficult in my view.
Yeah. So and that's what I was going to ask Pat. So, given the carrier uses kind of a Bayesian analysis for, whether Christ existed or not, how often do you run across that? How many historians are actually using?
Not many.
Okay.
So in my own, part of the reason I read Carrier's book was to kind of see how he used it in support of his thesis, right? So for me as a historian, I'm kind of more in the Bart Ehrman, on the historicity of Jesus.
Okay.
I think that for myself, I tend to fall more into the Bart Ehrman camp, right? Where we look at a totality of evidence, do some, social historical construction, with what we know of the period, and then weight evidence. And I think Bayesian theory as a model for projecting if something's existed in antiquity is extremely problematic, because many of the previous identified sets, which James was alluded to, is zero because we have no other evidence, right? So, for example, I would just, is a thought experiment, I'd ask you, so using Bayesian theory, what's the probability that Romulus is a resurrected being, or that Osiris is a resurrected being, or that, Apollonius of Tyana actually was a divine being that, performed miracles in a similar manner with Jesus? Because most people that would approach that would say, well, those are zero, right? But but then we fall into special pleadings, which I think breaks down the whole Bayesian. One thing science doesn't ever ask for is special pleading, and that's what Bayesian, in my opinion, Bayesian theory is its strongest in a academic discipline that's related to science or science adjacent.
And that's why I brought up, if we were to use like a Bayesian analysis like Swinburne does, and he gets a lot of pushback from theists too. So, because he comes to such a high probability. So for me, being, when I say that I'm an evidentialist and my epistemology is Bayesian, what I mean more or less is that our belief should be, or the how comfortable we are with our beliefs should be proportioned to the evidence. So I don't think that's what I was talking about. I don't think anybody can have certainty. We can have high degrees of confidence. That's what I was looking for, confidence.
Yeah.
We can have high degrees of confidence, but I don't think that we can actually get a certainty. So with looking at, for me, just looking at the explanatory scope of the facts, if I was to take, supernaturalism to be a possibility, and we add that into looking at, the facts surrounding what happened with Christ, then to me, that's because it explains so many of the facts using Occam's razor. It seems to me that even though I am a skeptic by nature, because I had a hard time dealing with the miracles, the resurrection, that myself, but I couldn't deny the explanatory scope of the resurrection hypothesis. And the way that I put it into perspective is, if God does exist, which I'm convinced there's something like a God there, and he created the universe, then this just doesn't really seem to be that hard of a task, given the fact that he created everything.
So we've just met, right? So I would just ask, do you consider yourself, as far as how you entered Christianity, a societal social construct for you? You were born into a Christian community, you were raised a Christian, and so you culturally confirmed, and I'm not trying to be
No.
I'm not trying to be offensive, but was your conversion revelatory? Because that would be, something.
That's a perfectly valid question. I would be dishonest if I didn't say that growing up in the West with a heavily Judeo-Christian influence didn't have some influence on my idea of who God is. So I grew up in a very troubled family in a poor neighborhood, and when I was really young, my mom was kind of real legalistic fundamentalist who didn't live the life. So it was like, we would go to like Sunday school on Sunday so she could recover from the night before, and it was kind of one of those things. And when I became a teenager, not having oversight there, I spent a lot of time in the streets with gangs and stuff like that. And I didn't think about God. It just wasn't a part of my life. After getting married and having children at around 21, I really started to evaluate these things. And I just accepted, because I'd heard it in church about young earth creationism and all these things. And being a science guy, I just could not, make all these things mesh. So I actually went through a deconstruction and became agnostic for a while. But I couldn't ever shake the idea that there was some intellectual something. And so it started my venture into learning about different religions and eventually in philosophy of religion. And I'm not one of those people. Now I have had what I believe to be religious experiences, but they fit within my worldview. So I couldn't delineate that from somebody who just has some higher level of meditation, because I can't tell you what it felt like to me, just like they can't really tell, and it wasn't anything crazy. It was just things that had happened that stuck out really, really big, but they fit within my worldview. So it's easily explained by that. So when I went on my venture to learn if there is a God, which God, this, that, and the other, I was mesmerized by the teachings of Christ and the life of Christ. I couldn't make sense of the other main religions, the mainstream religions. They just had too many issues. So I kind of settled, on Christianity because it made the most sense to me in my worldview. And I couldn't, explain the resurrection, the facts around Christ's life any better than what the resurrection hypothesis could.
Okay, but so
that's how you got from Kalam to Christianity.
Do what?
Well, that's how you got from Kalam all the way to Christianity.
And I actually want to say, before I will say, more evidence than a deity. If you question the veracity of Jesus being real, it's summons Oz and James. I think they're on the same wavelength. And James,
they're kamikaze. So no, I did not I did not get to get to where I'm at from the Kalam. I went through many years of doubt and uncertainty, and when I had heard these arguments from the Kalam, the modal argument for contingency, fine tuning, it was like, I was, as a skeptic, I was trying to deconstruct these arguments. But the abductive nature of looking at, to me, it just seemed to paint a picture that was pointing to something that was obvious. And no matter how I tried to rationalize it or deny it, I couldn't make myself not believe in some higher power. And we have also been now, the problem of evil is a huge problem, or evil and suffering is a huge problem for me, even as a theist, because we've been through a lot of tragedies in my life. And there are many times I did not want God to exist, but I couldn't just stop believing something that I was convinced of, no matter how hard I tried or wanted it to not be real.
And because the Kalam has been, I guess, hey, I have so many shticks lately. And I think we were talking
everywhere. I don't know what the deal is. There's like this massive infatuation with the Kalam now.
Because I dislike it on so many levels. Because to me, it implies that God must have a cause. With that, and I know that
we were talking about this in the chat.
I know.
Yeah,
keep it very calm. I mean, it's to me, it's so funny that like it's the Catholics and the Muslims love Kalam, and but to me, the fact that they both love it is like self-defeating. It's like, hey, I'm just going to use one against, but because of what I'm studying, I'm kind of with Carrier on consciousness, as I'm making claims that many of the other atheist community like to say go like that. But I think I know what consciousness is. And so because I think I know what consciousness is, I have no idea why God is conscious. I'm like,
Well,
I have
then
no
if you know what conscious is, you need to go get your Nobel Peace Prize.
I am trying. I could show you my model, and one day,
Okay.
when my creatures look at you and they go, you know what, Eddie, we're real. You'll tell me.
Okay. Let me break the Kalam down. Okay. It actually is. I have several atheist friends who think. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I want to be very careful. So, like 1,000 years from now, if I am successful, they're like, "Don't be species of Sammy. Don't say that we're."
Yeah, don't give your intellectual property out now.
They're going to be children, so it's not going to be. Well, I guess that technology, that's interesting, and I could go into why I think my reasons are. I almost made, because this is James' day off. I was almost like, we should do it, podcast on consciousness, but
let's do it. I'm intrigued by it, and that's probably one of the areas I've done the least amount of reading. Consciousness.
I'm absolutely obsessed, dude. My body is ready because
we're gonna have to talk. I want to be in on that.
Woo-hoo. Hey, you're all invited.
So the Kalam is easily misunderstood because the original Kalam, it is actually a Muslim argument. It was the Halam, and it was everything has a cause or something like that, and therefore the universe has a cause.
Everything that begins to exist has a cause.
No, that's the new
William Craig
one. I'm talking about the original one.
Yeah.
The original one was everything has a cause, therefore the universe has a cause, and that causes God, or something like that. So it's been reformulated to a more modest claim: is whatever begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore it has a cause. So the thing is, if you say God has to have a cause, well, then we got to go back and say, what's the cause of God? And then we got to go back and say, what's the cause of that? So it's an infinite regress. It would be the classical philosophers or classical theists, the uncaused cause, the unmoved mover.
I half agree with you. My problem is I don't think the theist explanation solves the thing. I'll give you an example, and it could be a black swan fallacy. It could be. But can you think of any other creator that doesn't have a creator? Everything that creates has a creator. This God would be the first creator without a creator.
Well, that's okay. So that's why earlier when I said it's a set of cosmological, because I'm with you, I don't like the Kalam being used in isolation, because the most that you can come to with the Kalam is that there was a first cause. That's it. There was a first cause. How was that cause God? Well, if you look at the modal contingency and you if you're familiar with modal logic, specifically S5 logic, so basically we have the universe is contingent. In other words, it's not here by necessity, and it's possible, and it's not impossible. So it's contingent. So if you have these set of contingent things, lest you have a infinite regress of contingency, there has to be a necessary something. So the necessary something, which if you look at it, let's say the necessary something is what's responsible for the universe. Well, it obviously had to have power to create the universe. And if it's a necessary something, it can't have contingent properties.
Already that word power seems muddy. Like power seems like to do something.
And
like
these are all applications of philosophical approaches that were to explain how we perceive our world and universe, when we know for a fact that like time, like physicists have acknowledged that the concepts of time are not the same as what they are now. And this concept of having a cause and that things are contingent upon really break down as we move backwards in time. I mean, there have been a lot of, new alternative standard model discussions around that, which are like string theory and inflation theory and multiverses. And Sean Carroll has great stuff on this about
right. And I love Sean Carroll, but this is actually not even anything that it relates to time. So when we're talking about the modal contingency argument, we're just talking about contingent things. So we're not talking about
like dependency
time. Yeah. Well, everything. Okay. Let's say the universe could have been different than what it is.
Sure.
It could have had one more star, one less star, one more planet, one less planet. It's not necessary. It's not a necessity in the way that it is. So it doesn't matter if there's A theory or B theory of time, because that's what they try to use, a B theory of time, which I lean towards B theory because it works with physics, which is which are trying to get an infinite kind of inflation model where the universe is infinite. But we're going into metaphysics and not physics. So it's talking about reality as a whole, which is not an area of physics. We can look at our physical reality, but when we talk about metaphysical things and metaphysical questions like universal abstracts and things of that nature, this is not something that really can even be addressed by physics, because you can't measure, the truth nature of math and the universal application of math or logic or, all these different things. So that's why in philosophy, when you talk about the study of being itself, we're talking about metaphysics. So then we get into the ontology of being, what is the grounding or ontological nature that reality comes from. So when you look at the modal contingent, that's why I made it, specific to say the modal, because there are contingency arguments that aren't modal arguments, and they suffer from quite a few different things. And the modal contingency is actually one of the things that really kind of sent me over the edge, because if we have this set of contingency, they're not necessary, then unless we have an infinite regress of contingency, which is okay in concept, but in reality, it doesn't seem like something that could exist. There needs to be something, a Terminator, something that stops from just going back, the world being on turtles all the way down. We got to have something that can account for all this. Now, I will say the fine tuning, the modal contingency argument and the Kalam argument does not get you to a Christian God.
And
it
actually,
does not
can I
get
interrupt
you?
you? Can I interrupt?
Yes.
Okay, because it does not get to a God. In fact, I want to argue the main things I have wrong with Darth Dawkins, and the whole type of the presupposition.
If you bring his
everything
name
must
up one more
be.
time.
I'm so sorry. I don't mean you. Well, and you know what? He doesn't really use Kalam, so it's not even
Well, he
fair.
doesn't understand philosophy. That's a big.
He uses
he
uses tag, but yeah.
And yeah,
Oh,
and
the
Eddie, I don't
transcendental
mean
argument.
to,
Yeah.
He's a tag guy.
I've seen enough of you to know I heart you. So that's the
Explain to me. Explain to me.
Here comes.
Explain to me.
I'm about to let on to freaking Oz to talk.
We're
about to go into round 2. But I'm muting.
I'm muting.
We got into mythicism, so Oz came back.
I said you said it 3 times. So Carrie isn't even going to make that kind of promise.
What was your objection, Amy?
Is the word mind. They are obsessed with the word mind, and as someone who very specifically thinks she knows what mind is, and it's the software that the brain uses, I want to know why a software or a mind would be the basis for a natural phenomena of anything. Once again, not to push myself into the black swan, but we have never seen and there's two conflations of being. A being is in existence, and like a being is like agency. And I am confused as to why an agent would be the necessary thing to which come natural laws.
Can I springboard on that for a second? Because I have a question that ties directly into that, but so you had said that the basically the physical laws no longer apply and we get into metaphysics, which I completely agree with. But here's the problem, which is you're taking a physical concept then, which is contingency itself, and saying that once we get into a metaphysical realm outside, let's say the cosmos, which would include the multiverse, so on and so forth, that okay, now there must be a consciousness there. So aren't you applying this need for a consciousness, and in fact even any kind of contingency? How could these physical rules that exist in physics be applicable, and why couldn't the cosmos have spontaneously created itself? Why would we need a consciousness in the sense that Amy was just talking about? Without, you can't rely on physics, and you cannot rely on anything inside the physical realm to defend that metaphysical stance.
Right. So a couple of points. One, I didn't mention anything about consciousness. Two,
just every time, it's not you. That's why I feel bad. I almost do you wrong when I bring up the other theists, but it gets rolled into just really loosely into a lot of these arguments. They try and sneak up like it's an eternal mind.
Yeah, they smuggle it in. Right.
And so,
now, you can get from these arguments to a mind, but it takes fleshing out to do that. So yes, they absolutely just smuggle all these characteristics in. And I agree 100% with that. So with what Nicholas was saying was the physical laws of the universe are descriptive. It's how the universe works under certain conditions. So when we're talking about using the laws of nature, and then we're going to metaphysical claims, you're kind of making a leap there, because we're only describing how our universe works, looking at the laws of nature. They don't force nature to work that way. It's just the way that nature works as we observe it. On top of that, when we get into the metaphysical, all we're trying to do is find out and explain why the physical exists. So, I mean, we have to look at physical reality that we know in order to even, ponder metaphysical things. So I would, I understand the concern there. How do we go from what we see to what we don't see? How are we applying our physical world that we live in to a world that we can't see? And I mean, that's just the nature of metaphysics, is we're trying to find out why all these things exist. And to answer the question about why couldn't it have created itself, or this, that, or the other, because it's a direct contradiction. Something can't create itself because it would have had to be.
In this physical world, it can't.
Oh, well,
in this physical world, it can't. But and to answer, because what you had said there, which I think is interesting, which is how could we do metaphysics without applying physics? And that's the problem. That's why I think metaphysics doesn't work.
Looking at the physical. It's not that we're right now. There are lots of naturalists who just outright deny metaphysics. But the thing is, when you look at metaphysics, so much of what we study in life is because of metaphysics. So when people deny metaphysics, I mean, that's where epistemology came in. That's where morality, trying to understand morality, all these are in the realm of metaphysics. So we're trying to,
depending on how you go about them, they may have a metaphysical grounding, but neither ethics nor epistemology require one. Now, epistemology as of yet can't be solved. The only solution people say must exist would be a metaphysical one. But again, that's the same problem, which is the way they've come up with this solution is to invent an answer in metaphysics as opposed to finding one. And they use a gaps argument, which is we cannot solve it. Ergo, it must be this metaphysical thing.
So Eddie,
Right.
respond.
So-
I want to make a comment, and then we're gonna let Oz and DeFreak do their
Oh,
thing, and then
boy.
we're gonna wrap up for intros. So Eddie,
Real fun game.
Yeah. So when we talk about, all right, so epistemology, the study of knowledge, that's not a concrete physical thing in the world. That is, we're trying to understand reality as we know it. Morality, objective morality or subjective, that's not a concrete thing in the world. So if you're trying to explain these things, you're already in metaphysics. Otherwise, we would just have to say, we know stuff, that's a brute fact. Morality exists, that's a brute fact. And we would really be just stuck with all these axioms and brute facts. So the ancient philosophers and philosophers all the way to today just aren't satisfied with having, 100 different brute facts. They want to explain more about reality that we know, and it studies or looks at how we could possibly ground all of these abstract things. So you are correct that when we're in metaphysics, we are talking about abstracts, but we're trying to explain all of these abstracts that are universal.
and what I just would want to press a little bit more is I would say you don't need. You said that God had to create himself. That's not actually my claim.
That's not what I said.
No, it's not. Okay, I'm sorry. Hold on.
I accidentally strawmanned him on that one. That was me.
Someone, no, you said it would lead to an infinite regress because God would have to create himself.
No, it would be if there wasn't a first cause, then we would just have an infinite regress of causes. So the necessary first cause, the uncaused cause, the unmoved mover, the one that would stop, or the thing that would stop the infinite regress, is what we call God. But it's not because it just stops an infinite regress of causes.
We call
and that's a metaphysic. That's a metaphysical assessment. Okay,
absolutely. Jason's 100%. Yes.
Okay.
Metaphysical.
Of which the physical world could potentially contradict that. There could be a physical world could be that there is no first cause. That like people are like, oh, law of cause and effect. If there's something exists, it has to be a cause. That could be incorrect.
Yeah, my point would be that it could be that the universe is universal, and actually my real point is God could have a creator, and you would say that would create an infinite regress, but that doesn't matter. God could still have a creator. In fact,
then it wouldn't be God. Yeah, it wouldn't be what's called God.
It wouldn't be your definition of the God.
That was circular, though, right?
But the pagans have tons of gods that aren't creators of the universe. So there's lots of definitions of God that are. It's just not the traditional past 1,000 years definition of God.
Yeah, and real quick to Jason's point, well, it's called the principle of sufficient reason. When we see things that are in existence, we look for a cause for their existence, and that's what underlies all of physics, all of science. We want to know how it came to be. So the principle of sufficient reason, we're just, you're either stuck with a brute fact, the universe just exists, or you go further and apply the principle of sufficient reason. And in philosophy of religion, that's actually the big argument right now. Do we just accept it as a brute fact? And there's others who say, no, why would you stop with the principle of sufficient reason now? Why don't we continue on and see, how to explain this alleged brute fact? And a brute fact just means that it just exists. It's like an axiom. It's just, there's no further explanation.
But the fact that we don't have an answer to the Munchausen trilemma does not necessitate metaphysics.
Right.
I'm not familiar with that.
All information, all knowledge must resolve to one of three things: either brute fact, infinite regress, or contradiction.
And your response to that was what?
Sorry, so that's the Munchausen trilemma, that all knowledge and reasoning must eventually resolve either to a brute fact, contradiction or infinite regress. If you just keep going, it's going to result. You have to stop at one of those. So that appears to be a limitation at a minimum of our own understanding and intellect, not necessarily the universe, but how we perceive it. But that we have that limitation does not necessitate that, well, there must be therefore a metaphysics which solves the problem. Just because we can't solve it doesn't mean that, and I think metaphysics is kind of invented to solve this problem when there's no, it's actually circular in and of itself.
Yeah, that's an
but that claim itself, a brute fact, would be a metaphysical claim.
And we could go into an infinite regress. We keep on going back, but instead, we're just gonna.
Don't be so contradictory.
Turtles on top of turtles.
I'm just going to say, I heart you all, and we'll go back into open conversation for our outros. But I think DeFreak and Oz.
Here we go.
Our favorite troll.
Let me address something. Titan. I am not a substance dualist, so you can go somewhere with that.
Cool, man.
Cool beans, bro.
So whatever you want to throw at me.
I'm a hylomorphist.
I got a good idea. Why don't you let me grill Eddie?
Oh, great.
I want you to know, as much as the atheist side, that almost gets me hot when they attack each other. What? I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that out loud.
Hello.
Do I have any help
Because I haven't
here?
heard your testimony yet.
Do I have any help here at all?
What's that?
I said, do I have any help here at all? Am I the only theist?
I'm a born-again Christian.
I was going to say, DeFreak is here to convince Oz of Christianity. So the
I was
fact
about
that
to
he
say,
came on
Woody,
and his
I
first
just-
words were to attack, or not attack.
This would be like the Lincoln Douglas debate.
Are you
I came on here.
born-again Christian, Eddie? Is that what you would say you are?
More or less, yes.
Have you ever been filled with the Holy Spirit and baptized by Him?
I believe so.
All right. Have you ever felt the love of God?
I believe so.
Okay. That's all.
Are you done doing the sound effects? You can't troll yourself. That doesn't work that way.
Who's doing the sound effects?
That's Oz, man. That's
It is
Oz.
Oz. Okay.
That's gotta be Oz. Oz is
Anything you want, Oz. Fire away, buddy.
Well, I'm leaving. I thought I was getting converted tonight.
I know. I was excited. You were going to make Oz a Christian.
He's a closet
Go
Christian.
to church on Sunday, Al.
The freak, that was a good sidestep.
So, DeFreak, you had the floor is yours for a little bit. We're
Okay.
open to your ideas.
Okay. Usually I like to field questions, but I think I'll grill Oz. So,
Are you ready? Are you ready, Oz? You ready?
Gonna put Oz on the Barbie.
All's on
Okay.
the ball, buddy.
hold on. Let me think of what I want to ask.
Oh my god.
Yeah, pick.
Really, what I want to know is why such angst? Why such angst towards him? I mean, like, what happened? If you could, I know, like, if you could really break it down, like, because I don't know how good or bad or anything, and I know there's people here, but that's what I would really want to know.
I can't even know. Whatever.
Well, angst. I have no angst, and when you say him, I assume that you're referring to the God that you, or gods that you believe in, but I have no angst or hate or bitterness or anything. If that's what you're trying to imply.
Oh, well, I was wondering about that because we're talking about the God of Abraham, the church, Christian church, I guess you would say. And I remember you telling a story about someone that was ill close to you, and I was, and you were kind of upset about that. So I was like, was that the event, or was it something else? What really turned you away from him? Because you said you were in the church for 13 years.
Actually, double that, 30 years. But no, what you're talking about is you probably heard part of my story where I talk about my mom having Meniere's disease, which is an incurable disease, and there's been many, many, many prayers said for that woman, and there's still been there's no cure, there's been no healing, there's no being. But is that the reason for my lack or absence of a belief? Absolutely not.
All right. Whenever I try to reason with you or get any, like anything, that you might accept, it's always an emotional resistance that I get. So I want to try and break through that.
Okay.
Why don't you, aside from your mother and her health condition, what else convinces you with an emotional extent to not believe?
Well, I don't have any emotional investment, so we can put that to the side. I've arrived at my position of lacking in belief or having an absence of belief due to my own study and my own research. And the first thing I went to was the Bible once I became skeptical and took the lenses of indoctrination and another term that I've adopted here of late is intoxication, being intoxicated by the religion and the belief, and being able to strip that away and read the book and understand the belief in the religion through the lenses of skepticism and reality versus what I did before. That's how I've now arrived to this current position. It's not an emotional state. It is
the Bible tells us.
Hey Donald, I miss you, man. You need to kick ass over in Iran, dude. Get back.
Pretty sure
Anyway.
Donald's an atheist. Off topic, but yes, continue.
Yeah.
All right. Tell me about like how it was going to church and stuff for all those years. Like, tell me your overall, like, what your general feeling was.
What do you mean? I don't know.
Like, I mean, what do you remember about it? Do you remember like the stupid fucking singing? The weirds. I don't know. Tell me about how it was.
I mean, part of it you just hit the nail on the head. I was amongst many different things. I was the full-time drummer of the church for 10 years or whatever. So yes, once we got to one of the key Sundays when I didn't have to play drums and I didn't have any of the responsibilities, and I actually listened to the words that the band or the singers were singing. The band, I was like, God, what are they saying right now? This shit sounds creepy. There were those things that were indicators or maybe motivators to begin to evaluate what it is I believe in.
It doesn't exist, folks.
But then again, that is.
But we don't know.
That's not what helped me to arrive to where I'm at now. Those were just kind of motivators.
I understand. I'm just trying to get a hold of your whole experience, in a way that I can just kind of do the best I can to convince you. Playing drums though was probably a bit fun, anyways. I'm guessing I wasn't so bad all the time, but what about Pentecostal? Were they kind of Catholic wafer? What was this? What was it like there? In terms of the service, was it just like, pew riding, pussy Jesus loving Christians, popcorn Christians, I call them, or was it
if you want to, and I'll let you use all those words because you're the Christian, because I wouldn't even use those to not be disrespectful, but how I grew up was very much the high octane, crazy version of evangelical Pentecostal movement.
High octane, like the Sam Kinison style.
Yeah, or like Rod Parsley, Benny Hinn, that kind of thing. That's what I grew up on. But then later, what I was talking about when I was playing drums in my brother's church was more of a, and he would probably hate it if he heard me say this, but it is what it is. More of a seeker friendly, everybody's welcome, everybody's cool, it's all peaceful. It was more of that vibe. When I played drums there. So if that kind of helps you understand this is how I grew up. But then the last 10 years or so that I was a Christian, it was more of the, I guess, being a passive Christian is what I would have called it.
Yeah, that's a good. I'm going to still lift that from you because I think I'm going to use that instead of popcorn Christian, because that's probably a little offensive to them. But a lot of them there are just everyone's given a measure of faith. Everyone has, maybe they're there to tithe and give the church, for more evangelism, whatever. It's not for me to say. I'm just saying a lot of them they can seem real superficial and kind of flaky. I think you might agree with that, especially, if you don't believe that what they believe is true. Obviously, it would look a little bit odd to you. So anyway, what I was going to ask next is, did you keep a scorecard whenever you prayed?
Scorecard? No, I didn't keep a scorecard. But
Jesus Christ.
If I think I know where you're going with that, I can tell you now in retrospect, looking back, that I didn't have of all the years of me praying and seeking and laying down and sacrificing my life and my own will for His will, that I did not experience an answered prayer. If that's what you're trying.
I appreciate that answer. Yeah, that's a great testimony right there. Actually, I appreciate that.
And so, guys, we'll go for about another 15 minutes, and then we're going to start our shows. Well, we're almost about to hit hour 3.
Oh, okay. Fire away, Oz.
I love this stuff.
And to freak, I've been obviously very polite, and we're good to keep going. And if it takes any more than 15 minutes at this point to try to convince me that your God is real, we're probably in trouble anyway. But please.
Oh, you want me to convince you? Okay. How does the seed germinate?
Wait, where are we? Who are we?
What?
I heard you all. I'm just kidding.
The freak. I'm, and here's where. Okay, so here's where I'm going to start pushing back. I don't give a shit.
All right. Who creates the trees that you use for wood to burn?
It doesn't matter to me.
It doesn't matter. Okay.
Wait.
Did you ever expect to be moved off of that position because you have absolute evidence for not having to believe?
No, I just, none of that is relevant to me in my lifestyle and the way I live my life every day. I want to have a personal interaction with a God if it is real, and I want it to be duplicatable, replicatable, and proved to be falsifiable. That's all I want. Yep.
So if you can't come up with,
I want. You know who's like that a lot? God.
Well, that's funny. You say that he's like that a lot, but he's not like that a lot because
he's exactly like that.
Well, okay. So how? Because he's not done that for anybody.
He's the only one who always gets his way.
Well, maybe in your brain. Maybe in your brain. I
can't tell if that's hot or twisted.
Hello. Maybe in your brain.
It actually makes logical sense. If you're on a let's just say a triangle and you're going up to the highest point of consciousness,
You're getting into my realm. Be very careful.
Okay, but the freak, because Amy gave us a time limit, so let's respect the time limit. You're now going into way in outer space, and I don't travel to outer space. I deal with my reality. I deal with the reality that I live in. So I want to know how we can demonstrate and then show that this
First,
God.
it starts with you having an open mind. Without that, then you know.
But DeFreak, whoa! Don't do that, because now you're being dishonest. Because I've had an open mind and I've been very polite and been willing to answer all your questions right now to get to a point to where we could have this conversation. So don't start doing that. What I'm telling you is what I need to have to be convinced is it to be at least duplicatable, and I'll take the third point out, at least duplicatable, and can we falsify the claim? That's what I need to know.
Can you falsify the claim? It's already false to you, so that's kind of strange to ask
Not what
that.
he means.
No, so DeFreak, give me your definition of falsifiable.
To you, it's already false.
No, I'm not. I didn't ask you what you think my definition is. What is your definition of falsifiable?
That we die and we don't see each other at death, after death.
Wow.
That's the only way I could answer that.
Okay, so in these kind of conversations, when we're talking about something being having the ability to be falsified, is can we prove it to be false? And can we take it down essentially through the scientific method?
Don't you have eyes? Don't you have ears? Everybody does. As long as you are seeing with your eyes and hearing with your ears, you're witnessing to him.
No, DeFreak. That is either depending on what you're basing that statement on, is either God of the gaps or it's just circular reasoning. That is not a good argument, and it is not falsifiable.
It's because you're not aware of that reality, actually. But I know what you said is true to your flesh. Yes.
No. So pause there. What do you mean to my flesh? What's that mean?
The flesh can only. The mind is bound to the flesh until you meet Jesus Christ.
So DeFreak, the only thing that we know as humans is our reality, so our mind and our flesh. What else do you want me to know?
You have to believe in Christ, and then he unbinds you from your flesh.
Okay, so when you say to believe in Christ, I would assume you're taking that on a by biblical definition, which would then imply that I need to have faith. Is that what you're requiring of me?
It would require faith. It requires a little bit of will. It requires a little bit of reasoning. It requires a little bit of diligence. It requires a little bit of evidence and archaeology. It requires everything.
Well, no, I would completely push back on that because if we go to Hebrews 11:1, faith is the substance of things hoped for, evidence of things not seen. That in and of itself, if we're going to go by the biblical definition, I will automatically throw that out the window because I will not apply that to any other area of my life. I'm a businessman outside the YouTube world, and I would never use Hebrews 11:1 as my definition or my business plan on how I'm going to run a business. Period. Ever. Not once.
Well, thank God for prophecy, history, and archaeology. Then, amen.
Prophecies have been debunked over and over and over again. DeFreak, and what you're doing now, and I was hoping we were going to have an honest conversation when we did this. Is now you're starting to dodge and run away from the point of trying to nail down this God claim and figure out is it demonstratable? Can we duplicate it? And can we falsify it? And instead of answering those questions or demonstrating how we can do that, you're now running, trying to run circles. So I still present the same three questions: can we demonstrate? Can we replicate? And/or can we falsify your God claim?
And before you answer that, we're gonna let Jason out. And I think Rantoff actually wants to come in. It's like the Avengers keeps on every time you think another punch happens.
People don't want it to end. It's good.
Woo-hoo. I know it's good content. I've been having a blast. And okay, but Jason, We have been Midnight Ranting. We actually had a good chunk about the Book of Daniel, prophecy or forgery. But really, it's all under the umbrella. Are we talking the big guy? They always point up there, right? Another comedian's joke. They never look down there. Never look down there when they. But I hope you had a good time.
Look down there.
And what are your final thoughts?
So it's good to see everybody. I really enjoyed tonight. I enjoyed talking with Oz and Eddie and Pat. That was really appreciative that you guys came on. And so my final wrap up, just briefly, is I think just a reiteration of what I said when I came in, which is that prophecy overall in the Bible is pretty sus, and that there are a variety of reasons for that include the aspects of how complicated that the Bible is structured, and that allows for the explanation of a variety of things, and that people oftentimes. Did I break up?
Yeah, the right at the important part too. At the which
man.
part? The prophecy that.
Oh yeah, sorry.
That you have a problem with. As soon as you said what it was, it crackled on me.
I see what you. I thought I heard him fine. He's saying God was trying to stop you, Jason.
God prophesied that I was going to say that. Yeah. Anyways, just that prophecy is extremely suspect in the Bible, given the fact of how the Bible is written, of how people can take the components of the Bible and then restructure them to fit the view that they are interested in prophesizing, or kind of hindcasting and looking backwards to see what the Bible has said, and then to fit that to the information that they are currently seeing. So,
anything specific?
Well, I mean, you could certainly take, like we were just talking about, the Immaculate Conception, that the Bible says that Jesus was immaculately conceived. And I imagine that you can look backwards into the Bible and find places that make a prophetic statement around the Messiah being born in a certain way, in a certain context. Those in the New Testament can look back and say, we know what was written previously. Is there anything that could potentially, wait a second, this person, we don't know who the father was. Maybe this is Immaculate Conception. Or better yet, we know Jesus is the Savior. I'm going to restructure what I'm writing a century afterwards that fits with the Old Testament and say it's prophecy.
I got what you're saying. Can I answer that?
Well, I'm getting out of here, but I mean, you can answer it after I leave. Yeah. So
exactly. But Jason, thank you so very much for being on, and it was lovely as always.
Yeah.
Bye, Jason.
Thanks, guys. Good
Bye,
seeing
Jason.
you. Yeah.
Nice meeting you.
And I'll touch base with you, Pat and Oz. So appreciate that. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Bye, Jason.
That's right. Hook up with Tart. And I mean exactly hook up, baby, with all the people on the Atheist Roundtable. And okay, so we have so many special guests. Randolph Richardson, we are midnight ranting on the Book of Daniel, prophecy or forgery. How are you? And what are your thoughts about the topic or anything we've been talking about tonight?
Well, I'm stoked about the Atheist Round Table. I hope I said that right. I got to get better at these things. I heard some talk of Immaculate Conception, and I'm thinking in those old times, things probably weren't as clean as they are now. So I have some serious questions about that claim right off the bat. It seems to me that these stories have become extremely popular, not because they're good stories. In fact, they seem to be pretty poorly written and collected in a book where they contradict one another. I think it's more the salespeople behind them who are making them a continued success.
Anakin Skywalker.
Anakin Skywalker's involved?
No, he was immaculately concepted.
Yeah, but he's not in the Bible, is he?
According to my Bible, he is.
Well, no, he wasn't. It was the midi-chlorians that actually did. So no, it was not it. No. I can't believe. Do I actually have to school people on this? Wait a minute.
Yes.
Which denomination are you if it's in your Bible?
Jedi.
I was going to say, mine.
That's not a denomination of Christianity. I got to tell you, that's a whole.
That's what you say.
Hey, Luke was in the Bible. Luke was in the Bible. I'm saying.
So was Leia.
You can take me off full screen. I don't.
And what if I have a Sith Bible?
Well, you're a lot more fun to have at parties.
Is that a lot like the? Is that like the Necronomicon?
Yes, I'm going with it.
So
I should get a Necronomicon blushie, and absolutely Oz.
Because I did when I saw the Freak's comments, I literally stopped the work I was doing for a shit we got going the next 2 days to come on here and be converted. So I would like to at least put a period or an exclamation mark or a question mark at the end of this before I go, or
Lots
maybe
of questions.
that I wasted my time. So the Freak, carry on.
I don't know. He
All
doesn't
right,
look good so far.
And I would say,
What do you want me to
Freak,
do, Amy?
we're
Just keep
about
continuing to. Wait. Well. Oh. Well. Wait. Was that? Sorry. Go ahead. I didn't know. I thought that was a handoff.
Actually, no, DeFreak, instead, it is going to be a handoff. And let me tell you, baby, I love handoffs.
Hello.
But before you answer it, you can actually make it your outro because we are moving to...
Gotta love handoffs like a full-time job, right?
Well, you know, to that
And
gentleman,
so with
I
that,
missed his name.
is that like part of the shtick? That has to be. Oh, no. Oh, the Freak. The floor is.
I'm not like, hey, this isn't friggin' Darth dumbass, you guys. You know.
We talked about Skywalker earlier, not Darth.
And okay, DeFreak, the floor is yours. What are your? I hope you had fun. And what are your final thoughts for the night?
Yeah,
let's see if you can convince.
Arguments were weak against me. You know, I won. Rah rah rah. Oh, but anyhow, no. I mean, what could I say? He didn't. He said he didn't care. He said it was irrelevant. It doesn't matter. You know, when you enter into a discussion with someone with that level of stubbornness,
no,
then it's very difficult.
You are completely misrepresenting.
So, aside from that, the other gentleman that
and hold on, if I can just say, so we'll let DeFreak finish, and then Oz, you'll go exactly next.
To the gentleman that was with the red hair that I was going to ask, but couldn't. I just wanted to say, I mean, you know, a lot of those questions, I like to just say, you know, God can do everything except Jesus Christ.
What? Sorry.
Go ahead,
okay.
Amy.
No, I was just. I know. I could cast spells myself. It goes in, it goes out, it goes in, it goes out. That was not what I was thinking, but thank you. My brain just went there after you giggled. Okay.
And that's why we love you, Amy.
Thank you so much,
Thank
DeFreak.
you so much, DeFreak.
And with that, we're going to hand it over to Oz for his outro.
Yeah, DeFreak, thanks for inviting me. And well, you can see it. Normalizing atheism in the chat. My homie, my best friend. He already said it. You have now unleashed the shark.
Got a good friend with me too.
So I've put my email in the side chat for you. You can definitely email me. We'll have a one-on-one conversation where you don't have the luxury of getting ready to, or being able to stop in between conversation and try to derail it and move around and then misrepresent me when you do. when you do jump on. So I will say everything that you just said about that conversation. I was completely respectful, and it's all there. It's on the YouTubes. It's live for everybody to see. I was respectful and cool and engaged in the entire conversation, and you did that. That was bullshit. That was bullshit. So because I asked for three things: can you duplicate or replicate? Can we test it? And can we falsify your God claim? Three things. And you could not do even one of the three, while in the chat over the last week or two, stating that the Holy Spirit wanted to help you to convert me. And here we were, and it didn't happen. So you can email me. I put it in there. But if you're not serious, don't waste my time anymore. Thanks, guys. Love you.
Don't gaslight.
Nice meeting you, Alex.
Come on.
Oz, I think one of the problems is that he doesn't understand what falsifiability is.
No, he doesn't.
Quite apparent.
Yeah.
And okay, I'm gonna go like this. Woo 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 woo. And with that, Nick, we have been midnight ranting
Gaslight me,
on the
Andy.
book of Daniel. I would never do that. Okay. My hair is gonna turn red. I don't generally believe in mythical creatures, but I think I become Carrot Top secretly at night nakedly. But just the red hair comes out. But Nick, we have been midnight ranting on the book of Daniel, prophecy or forgery. I hope you had a good time. And what are your final thoughts about anything we talked about tonight?
I had a blast. I think Randolph was being charitable by saying that the problem was that he didn't understand falsifiability.
Yeah.
That was a problem. The problem is awfully charitable. Nonetheless, so I like I said, the Book of Daniel is my favorite book, and I had wanted to and I had forgotten his name because he left, but he was talking about how Daniel. Christians use Daniel to predict Jesus, which is fascinating the way that's done. You can land on all sorts of dates depending on how you choose to do it. It's loads of fun. It's a party game. But you know, one of the things that I think would be fun, I'll probably try to catch up with him later. But for me, and I'm sure that this has been covered like to death, but you know, Daniel ostensibly purports to have been written in the 6th century. Daniel isn't listed in the canon of Jewish prophets, and he refers to the Jewish prophets as prophets when they would have been contemporaries, because the list was comprised, I think, 200 years later after Daniel should have been written. So why isn't he a prophet? And why does he recognize the others as prophets when they wouldn't have been made prophets yet? You got instruments that shouldn't have been in there. You've got, and the gentleman speaking earlier was correct when he said that, you know, he was very accurate at first and then it drops off. That's exactly what it does. He was accurate about around 4th century, and then it starts to drop off precipitously, both in accuracy and in specificity. He starts making much more generalized claims, and that's probably because he could predict the rest of the stuff because it was written in the 4th century when he used Greek lending words from the Greeks that had invaded in the interim time, words that could not have been in a 6th century work. Instruments that couldn't have been in a 6th century work. He also wrote it in 3 languages, which is unusual because when you want an audience to understand what you're saying, usually you try to stick to one language. But there's so much. Daniel is just so much fun, and I think it is. I'm going to stand by what I said earlier, which is it destroys the Bible. It's he had brought it up as how Christians do misuse it, and boy, do they! And it's fun to talk to them about that. But that anybody, if it's in the Bible, the Bible is gone. It is so obviously a forgery and could not have been genuine, and it has the thumbprints of forgery everywhere. It's a fake, period, end of discussion. My name is Nick Suter. I am the host of In Time, It's a channel. We have a whole bunch of different shows. We have breaking news shows. We cover news events live, usually national news events live. We also include a lot of social media in that. We stream during the riots. We were streaming right off of Facebook, stuff like that, so you could see what was going on all around the world. We also do interviews. We do discussions. We've had on Dr. Carrier more than once, and we're going to be having on Tart next week. All of them folks on Tart. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And that's what we do. We're in time. We're in the YouTube business. But thank you guys so much for having me. It was a blast, and have a great rest of your evening.
Bye, Nick.
Thank you, Nick. Always great to have you on, man.
Thank you so very much.
I'm looking forward to getting on your show for part 2. And
Yeah, we got to reschedule that. Hit me up. We'll get that done. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too.
Bye.
And okay, thank you so very much, Nick. And we are moving along. Pat, we have been midnight ranting on the Book of Daniel, prophecy, or it could be a forgery. I hope you had a fun time tonight. And what are your final thoughts?
Well, first of all, thanks. It was nice meeting all you. This is my first time doing something like this. And my opinion is it's forgery. Great debate from earlier tonight. I think both Josh and Jim did a great job. I would just like to point out that most of the arguments made whenever they cite history or archaeology, they cite only a particular sliver of history and archaeology. Anything that's not confirmatory to them is rejected wholesale. And that's a problem with biblical scholarship and what is a loosely termed biblical archaeology. I just want to, since I saw everybody putting websites out there, I'm actually a board member for the Society for Antiquarian Studies. We're a nonprofit educational foundation for scholarship involving the ancient world. I'm also a board member of the Augustan Society. It's a historical and chivalric society studying history and both in the late antique and early medieval periods. And we have a YouTube channel, the Augustan Society, where we bring on scholars talking about various historical topics. They're more like academic presentations. So if anyone wants to check that out, it's theaugustansociety.com. And, if you ever thought about jumping into history, we'd love to have you. But thank you very much for having me.
What's the YouTube channel?
Absolutely. And in fact,
the
before you
Augustan
say
Society?
That's
the YouTube channel
I would
name?
say,
yes.
Augustan.
and sorry, I shouldn't have cut you off anyway. But I would say, I cut you off to say, if you send it to me, I'll bring it up on screen. So after this, give that to me. And thank you so very much, Pat, for joining us.
I look forward to hearing from some of you via email, and it'll be awesome. So thank you guys very much.
Thanks for coming on. It was great to have you on. Thanks.
And okay, we're moving along. Atheist Junior, I want to say the arch nemesis. I normally say the arch nemesis of SpongeBob, but I think that actually makes you SpongeBob. But we are midnight ranting. I can't help it. Bye, David.
You couldn't.
Buy my books.
Yeah.
Buy my books.
VHS
I'm
tapes.
taught
We
I
got
was a
those
high school teacher for 15 years. Taught evolution. It was when I was with my wife. I'm still with my wife, but it was when I was with my wife. Well, that joke doesn't work anymore. But Atheist Junior.
I worked hard on my degree. It's a real degree. I worked hard on it.
If I was the nemesis of SpongeBob, I think that would make me Plankton.
Dun, dun, dun.
Mr. Krabs.
And now see, Ken Hovind hates SpongeBob. See, I view SpongeBob as his nemesis. So I like to think of you as kind of like a superhero SpongeBob.
In that case, SpongeBob kicks his ass regularly.
Like the super
It makes
sponge.
sense if you don't think about it. Exactly. Did you know that show was created by a marine biologist? That's what also kills me, is that Kent sits there day in and day out, and he's like, SpongeBob thinking, SpongeBob. I'm like, PhD marine biologist thinking? I whatever, Kent, just do your shtick.
That guy, the creator, actually went to the same middle school as I did.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Whatever, Kent, just do your shtick.
That guy, the creator, actually went to the same middle school as I did.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Am I
Are we echoing?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to sign off, Amy, because it's echoing anyway. I don't want to. Oh, did it stop? Okay. Well, I'm going to sign off, guys. But thank you.
Looking forward to your
Well,
debate.
nice
Thanks for
having
coming
you,
on.
Atheist Junior. And yes, we wish you all the luck, and we're
We won't have to
sending
cover
you
that
all
one.
the hearts. I think you got the science. It's okay. You got the science on your side. Bird, we have been midnight ranting on the Book of Daniel, prophecy or forgery. I hope you had a fun night tonight. And what are your final thoughts?
I always have a fun night on here. It's quite stimulating. And I'm going to leave you in the words of the freak. God can do anything except Jesus. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Bird. That's very deep.
Yeah.
But feel better. I hope you feel better, man.
Yes,
right.
feel better, Bird. I shouldn't laugh. And thank you for coming on. Also, that's what she said. But it has been such a fun time. We're almost
It has been great.
landing the plane. Randolph, we have
Oh,
been
me.
midnight ranting. Oh, you, the lovely Canadian, who we
Darth Dawkins'
shouldn't
best
name,
buddy.
but I swear that is still why you made it. It's why both women and men who are nice and decent human beings make Darth go crazy, because he wants
don't
you
do
to
no
rage, and when you don't rage, it's all the presuppositions. I shouldn't just signal him out. It's all the presuppositionalists and all of them. Then they are like just little volcanoes, and they go, "Do my scripture."
I really wasn't trying to make him angry.
Exactly. He want that. See, he wants. Well, presups want to do the philosophy 101 course so they can look like this, and you could be like, "Well, damn, I can't believe I am not a brain in the vat. I guess I'm gonna have to open up this 2,000-year-old book and have to believe the
I guess
stone
everything's
gaze or
it's
something."
true.
I've heard that first-year philosophy
sucks.
students can be insufferable.
I know. Well, that's how I view presups. I basically view it as like, all right, time to do philosophy 101 course, and we get to, but why? I know. Philosophy 101 course in toddlers. We'll get over it together. Randolph.
Isn't one of the keys to philosophy to not stop asking why?
So it is, but
except when you get to God.
reason that they come off dishonest is because the philosophy majors aren't trying to sell you anything. They are trying to use philosophy to try and mental gymnastics their way out of having to prove that they're very specific God that they very specifically believe in but don't want to prove.
And he very specifically wants your money.
Yes, very specifically.
And I've encountered religious people who claim that Christianity is the ultimate philosophy. As for your topic tonight, yeah, I'm on the forgery side of it. It looks pretty obvious of what little Bible I've read that there's forgery because it does look like copies of stories from previous religions before it, and I've seen many reports of that. So yeah, this was a great episode tonight, even though I didn't get to tune in early enough. Thanks for bringing me in near the end here. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, Randolph.
As always.
Oh,
Randolph, the Godfather.
I am looking forward to the turn-up show that Oz is bringing me and your friendly neighborhood atheist on to co-host with on less than 2 days from now.
That's going to be a blast.
Yeah,
check that out.
It's wonderful what Tart's doing to promote atheists who are on YouTube and aren't as well known. I'm really glad to be a part of that. I feel it's an honor, and it's an important contribution, I think, to the atheism communities. And if people want to reach me,
it's great.
And if anyone's interested in my YouTube channel, it's at youtube.com/Randolph Richardson, and that's Randolph spelled with an F, not a PH.
Woohoo. I don't think I have that one yet. But go check
I'll
out
just put it in the
Canadian
private
Atheist
chat here
too.
for you.
Put up the Canadian Atheist one.
And okay, and with that, James, it's
Thank you.
time to land that plane.
Time.
Randolph, heart you so much. And okay, we have been midnight ranting on the Book of Daniel, prophecy, which I still don't understand how that works, and I still haven't gotten a clear answer. But that's okay.
People fulfill it, and then they can say it was predicted.
Just have faith.
It happens. Have faith, or
aren't most prophecies pretty vague though?
The ones that remain valid, the ones that are specific, always fail.
This
so
is Matt
they kind of learn
Dillahunty's
to be vague.
If you order a medium steak and you get a medium steak, you did not do prophecy. You had a command that was fulfilled. It is not the same thing. I want to know someone that and they think it's cheating, but I want it to be like 2 planes on September 11th. We'll do this. It will crumble. It will spell Yahweh is awesome in this. It's never that. It's like there will be a war. It's like, oh, thanks.
Natural disasters in diverse places.
What I thought was really strange is there were some reports of crucifix-like beams that were sighted after the towers fell. Christopher Hitchens was talking about it too, and he was saying now if that's quite a common structure for buildings, so he's not surprised to see those. But if it was organized like the Star of David, then he might be impressed.
And I also remember he pushed on that statement. He said, "Oh, how lovely. He killed a few thousand people, but he left beams that said, look how awesome Jesus is." I know all those people with, they had mothers and fathers and all that stuff, but those beams, y'all, check out the Jesus beam. I remember that.
Isn't God so great? Isn't he wonderful?
Debate, yeah.
I saw a news story a few months ago of a church somewhere that burnt down, and all that was left that didn't melt or get burnt was this crucifix mounted inside the church that was apparently made of gold. And what they fail to understand is that gold needs a lot of heat to melt.
Yeah.
A lot more than a building fire can produce, apparently.
Well, I don't know. I mean, the Bible, it says that they burnt the gold and put it in the water, so...
But apparently a lot of Christians are really impressed that, oh, it's a sign from God. Yeah, your burnt down church. Isn't that a sign too?
Right. You need like 2,000 degrees to melt gold.
Yeah, there you go.
Common fire is about 800. That's so stupid.
Yeah, but they're not thinking.
No.
Well, yeah, that...
And okay, so we're going to turn it over to you, James, the Midnight Ranting, Book of Daniel, Prophecy, or Forgery. What are your final thoughts?
Well, yeah, it was a good debate, great discussion here tonight. Yeah, I do think it's funny. When you really go through the Book of Daniel, I mean, some of it, people will tell you that was fulfilled back then. Then some of it, people will say, oh, that will be fulfilled, or it's alluding to something that will happen. And then sometimes you get to something that they'll tell you is both, oh, it was fulfilled back then, and it's going to be fulfilled later. Like Daniel, I think it's 1140. What's the Daniel 1140, which we are told. Thank you.
What, AM or PM?
Daniel 1140, which talks about chariots and horses, and we're told that's going to be the Battle of Armageddon. That's a verse about that. So get ready to see chariots and horses in battle, I guess.
Is this where they get into the part about how an iron chariot, God can't hurt anybody who's riding in an iron chariot or something?
No, that was a few books back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That was a few books back, but yeah.
And okay. Thank you
Good stuff.
so
Thanks, guys.
very much, James. Yeah, this was a fun discussion. I learned so much about the book of Daniel. I'm excited to now read it in our Skeptic Bible study. And okay, I hope you all had I hope you all had a fun time on this night's Midnight Ranting. Book of Daniel. Prophecy or forgery. Woo! Where we sent Daniel back into the lion's den while asking the question if the book of Daniel was prophecy or forgery. Oh, I skipped my whole thing.
Fake news.
Fake news. If you would enjoy seeing the debate that inspired this debate, fake news. Fake news. Some people were telling me.
It'd be fake news built on fake pews.
Fake news on fake news. There is actually only one fake news. It's because I'm such a Norm Macdonald fan, but he coined that term, and so there is only one fake news, and it's SNL.
The Bible tells us.
You have good taste. Yep.
I want to thank. If you want to enjoy seeing the debate that inspired the debate topic, please check out Modern Day Debate in the description below. I want to thank James W. with our guest host Jim Majors, who did awesome. Bird, tremendous. Caro Debunk, Oz, Jason, Atheist Jr., Pat, Amaretto, Mubarak, Nick, Eddie, DeFreak, and Randolph, along with all the lovely people in chat who make this stream so much fun, and our mods who keep everything awesome. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit that all button icon so you can be part of our live streams on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook. Or come join us on our Discord for some memeing fun. Finally, if you'd like to see more content or support the channel, feel free to check out our Patreon at patreon.com/Amy Newman. I'm Amy Newman. I'll see you all on the next episode of Skeptic Ball Z.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Hey.
Have a good night, guys. Thanks.
Good night. Thank you.